It's April 25th, 2024. Hi there, welcome to episode 320 of Rook. Let's say it again. The Islamic Republic is not the same as Iranians. The Islamic Republic does not mean Iranians. I'm Jian Hello to you from Toronto. Salam dostan aziz. Durud ba shoma. The Islamic Republic is not the same as Iranians. Dear Western media, with the world on fire, maybe it's once again time to clarify that the despotic leaders of the Islamic Republic and their pronouncements are not actually synonymous with the wills of the Iranian people. The Islamic Republic is not the same as Iranians. And dear activists of a certain stripe who think the Iranian people are marching in solidarity with you because of something an Ayatollah said that sounded like support for your cause, maybe it's once again time to give you a gentle reminder as well. The Islamic Republic is not Iran, and its leaders are not the same as Iranians. And while we're at it, if your cause is freedom for anywhere in the world, they are not your friends. For those of us of a certain age, we may remember a time when we were very young and the Islamic Revolution of 1979 had happened, and then through the 80s and 90s, we had to do our best to explain to anyone in the West who would listen that we were not the same as those mullahs who were bent on chants of death to America or demonizing anything non-Islamic. Part of this was legitimate self-defense for those of us growing up just trying to deflect racist stereotypes and generalizations being made about Iranians at the time. But also, an Ayatollah and his accomplices presiding over executions and the denial of basic human rights would appear on the nightly news, and we would have to desperately make the case that not only did these authoritarians not represent us, they didn't represent the mass majority of the people of what used to be Iran either. The Islamic Republic is not the same as Iranians. Then as the years went on, and with the growth of social media and a more globalized world, the green movement and more education about the region, we took solace in the notion that Westerners on talk shows and newscasts were seeming to make a distinction between the Iranian people and the murderous mullahs and their Islamic Republic. By the time of the killing of Mahsa Amini and the resulting uprising, we were even fooled into thinking everyone was getting it, that there is an Iran with a mass majority of its population aching for freedom and democracy, plus almost all of us in the diaspora supporting them, and we're all the enemies of the Islamic Republic who will literally imprison, torture, or kill anyone who shows dissent and speaks out or acts out for, say, the basic rights to assembly or dress. There's a reason some of us haven't been able to see our families for decades. The Islamic Republic is not the same as Iranians. That window of optimism that the Western world and its media understood the nuances of what's actually happening in the former Iran, now turned Islamic Republic, was short-lived, wasn't it? Fast forward to the current period where all manner of spokespeople in support of the Islamic Republic regime are being given platforms and purporting to speak for the Iranian people. Did you in the Western media already forget that you were reporting on kids being killed by these people in Iran just a couple of years ago? So it was that a professor in Tehran who's clearly working with or for the mullahs appeared on a popular Western TV program this week to give his perspective on the current situation in the Middle East. Without a blink of the eye, this person, who remained largely unchallenged by the befuddled host, repeatedly spoke for Iranians. According to him, Iranians were in support of the drone strikes on Israel. Iranians are in support of their government. Iranians see the folly of the West. Iranians support the spread of Islam in the region and the rest of the world, and say Iranians accept the downing of Flight 752 was a mistake. Do they? Did they? Do we? Sorry. What? The problem, of course, is that if you don't know the difference and you're sitting in Kentucky or Alberta or Brisbane and you hear this person being given this platform, you may have no access to the truth that he does not actually represent the people of Iran. Rather, it was the Iranian people who were on the streets inside Iran and around the world trying to overthrow this regime during the Women Life Freedom movement that just happened. But if the Western media is not telling you that part, well, it's back to us Iranians having to let you know. The Islamic Republic is not the same as Iranians. Let's be as clear as we can. Any credible assessment of the current sentiment of the population of Iran and this regime puts the favorability of the mullahs in minute numbers. There isn't support. There is only fear, an authoritarian society suppressed in a theocracy bent on maintaining its power, where even the fake elections that offer little choice are barely attended by the citizens anymore. The Islamic Republic is not the same as Iranians. The next time you're at a rally and you see the flag of the Islamic Republic, know that it's either not an Iranian or someone who is tied to this murderous regime. Yes, it's that obvious. On the other hand, if you want to know what Iranians do care about, it's Toomaj Salehi. That's the popular rapper and passionate advocate for change and freedom in Iran, who's been imprisoned and was this week sentenced to be executed for simple dissent. He is someone Iranians support. The Islamic Republic does not. Please note the difference. The Islamic Republic is not the same as Iranians. On this new episode of Rook, we will discuss Toomaj and the announcement of his execution and why it matters, plus a full episode dedicated to wellness-based medicine with two top practitioners in the field, Dr. Afrouz Demeri in California and Dr. Siamak Shirazi here in the Rook Studio, both joining us for feature interviews. This is Rook, episode 320. Let's get started. Right, here in the Rook Studio, and Smart Pegah is here.
Hello.
Hello. It's been a while since I did. I've done some opening essays, but they've been about Farmars or Manoto, or this feels like a bit of a. I mean, the issue hasn't changed in terms of what's going on with the Islamic Republic, but it feels like a bit of a throwback to a year and a half ago when we were doing this on a twice a week, these
exactly.
kind of,
Actually, I was thinking of that today, where I was seeing a lot of social media posts with everyone sharing, the demonstrations coming up, and just sharing posts about Toomaj, and it was kind of like the Twilight Zone. I felt like we were back in a year and a bit ago, when all everyone was sharing on social media was just about what was going on in Iran.
Yeah, and all those questions come up again. It's like, am I allowed to talk about anything else, or should we not only be talking about that, or shouldn't we be talking? And we're going to get into the Toomaj thing a little bit before we get to our two guests today, because I have a lot to say or ask you about in terms of what you think is going on, because it's so bizarre that I always think in terms of logic,
which doesn't apply.
It's in the leaders of the Islamic Republic. Yeah, I mean, because I just think, why would you do this?
Yeah,
just when you're getting your way with making inroads to the region, even gaining some, as I intimated in this essay, gaining some popular support around the world for your alleged interest in supporting freedom in certain places of the world. I mean, it's a nonsense, but to suddenly do this, to galvanize, to re-excite the opposition, both inside Iran, but certainly outside of Iran, to this regime, it's a strange move. We're going to get to that.
Yes, I'm going to hold my commentary till we get to it.
We'll get to it in a moment. First of all, I got to say I'm so excited about our two guests today. Both of them are remarkable humans, mammals, both of them. And I know both of these conversations are going to be amazing. First of all, Dr. Afrouz Demeri. I've known Afrouz for at least 20 years. And she's got a great personal story. She was working in Western medicine, and then gets interested in and lured into naturopathic medicine. She's now in California. She's very prominent. She has a big footprint in social media, and she's just very wise in terms of seeing, having a balance of Western and Eastern teaching in terms of the way she helps people. She's also a Zumba coach. She's got this whole thing, and the theme of today's episode, notwithstanding the opening essay and the situation with Toomaj, is wellness-based medicine. Now, what where I was going with that is, and this is something that I was reading in the research from Siamak Shirazi, who I'll ask, who's coming after Afrouz, Dr. Afrouz. Siamak, who's been on the show before, as a musician, is his day job or his real job or whatever you want to call it, is running a couple of clinics that specialize in naturopathic medicine, but also in Chinese medicine, which he's got a doctorate in, and in acupuncture. He's an acupuncturist. So he's got this Eastern-Western mix as well. And he talks about conventional Western medicine being illness-based medicine. You get sick
and reactive,
and you have to treat the sickness, right? Illness-based. And what he advocates for, and I'm sure what Dr. Afrouz Demeri advocates for as well, is wellness-based. So preventative medicine. What can we do? How can we help humans be better so that we don't get ill, or we don't get ill to the point where we desperately need doctors anyway, right? Some illness is not bad, you kind of your immunities, etc. But so wellness-based medicine, the case for wellness-based medicine is what this episode is about. Dr. Afrouz Demeri joining me from, I think, Orange County in just a little bit. She's waiting online. And then in the Rook Studio, Dr. Siamak Shirazi. Have you ever used, and I haven't asked you this as we go into this episode, have you been to a naturopathic doctor?
I have actually.
Actually, you currently go to one.
I do go to one, but she's not a naturopathic doctor. She's an Ayurvedic doctor.
That's right.
So Rosa Moradi, Dr. Rosa,
that's right, one of our former guests,
Yes.
But I think she would fall into the alternative to Western-based traditional medicine.
That's right. Yeah. And actually, I was going to say, I'm such a big advocate now for it, because I agree that whole, what you just mentioned about Dr. Siamak Shirazi's approach to, being preventative as opposed to reactive, it's so true. It really is. And I really do see the difference in how I felt since.
Because you're practicing what?
So it's Ayurveda, I guess, is the type of practice. But I can't say I'm even following it 100%. It's just minor changes that I've made that have caused overall well-being, to whether it's diet. Actually, it's everything. It's to what I wear, what I eat, how I sleep. It's all of it together.
That's the funny thing about when I'm researching, Afrouz and Siamak. I know them both, but I'm researching them professionally. It's remarkable how, not to denigrate their amazing masterful knowledge about this stuff, but it's amazing how simple it is. Like it basically comes down to try and take care of yourself. Like exercise, eat well,
sleep
try
well.
and which sounds ridiculous. Because it's just what everybody's mother has always said to them. But it's amazing how those things have scientific and or experiential evidence behind them. It's like, exercising will make you psychologically better, put you in a better place, so you'll have less depression and you'll want to eat better, and all these things, they're tied together, right? And so I want to ask them both, because it's a bit, for non-believers, it's like, oh, my foot hurts, I'm going to go in and get a lesson on spirituality from you. Come on, So
but that's really not what it is. And it's so funny, because I used to have that kind of mentality, years ago. And also the other thing I wanted to mention is, when you were saying it's so simple, it really is. But once you get into it, I think you realize how difficult it is with modern day life, the way, we're always on the go. There's no time for anything. And the way that we look at the breakage of time is, I think, what the biggest factor is. So yeah.
We have to mention that we're now little less than 2 weeks away from Rook Live 2, the sequel. At Theater Aurora, we are doing a live recording of our podcast. There are still tickets available. I do not believe there's any VIP tickets.
No more VIP
but there are still
tickets.
General tickets available. We'd love you to come. If you are in the Greater Toronto area in Canada, just Aurora being just north of Toronto, for those of you, if you're in the Greater Toronto area,
you know where Aurora is.
Yeah. But, for the sake of somebody listening in somewhere else in the world.
And it's on May 7th.
May 7th, Tuesday, May 7th. Tickets still available, which you can get a link to it from either our website. It's on the front page of our website, Rook Live 2. Just press the event button there. Or if you go to our Instagram, it's in the bio there. Just click the link and it goes straight to be able to buy tickets. What a lineup. Iraj Janati who will be attending, I think, with a special guest. Will be, I can neither confirm nor deny. I'll have to speak to the host of the show. But I think maybe performing something with somebody special. And we'll also be there to be presented our inaugural Rook Media Icon Award, being designed by one of our most exciting young artists that I know of. So all of that is happening with Iraj Janati. Dr. K, unequivocally one of our favorite guests.
Yes, definitely.
And really, we got a couple of doctors on today who are dedicating their lives. I think part of doing wellness-based medicine, even though it is a business, they make money from this, is really kind of taking it to the next level of how can I help people. And Dr. K, he's amazing, because he first of all, last time he was on the show, I was trying to go through his schedule. How do you take on the responsibility of helping the entire population of Iran virtually through the internet whilst working, being the head of a wing of your hospital in New York, So he's
Does he sleep? I really want to ask him next time.
That's our first question at Rook Live 2. Do you sleep?
Yes.
Maybe he'll fall asleep on stage and demonstrate. So Dr. K, who has some Canadian ties, he has some family here. I'm so excited for him to be part of this show. Najmeh Tansaz, the Iranian-Canadian boxer, fitness advocate, her first time on the show. She'll be joining us on stage along with our new Rook correspondent, her 6-year-old daughter, Jian,
amazing.
Who's the best. So she'll be there. I think she's left me a message this week. Hello, I would like to discuss what I'll be doing on stage. And I'm like, she's and last but not least, and certainly not least, the great Soli, Soliman Vasari, the great singer, the Sufi. Soli will be on stage performing with our dear friend and the amazing Babak Amini, who is so generous to give of his time again, because he was at our first Rook Live. They're going to be performing, but also Soli will also be a recipient of our Rook Media Icon Award, sponsored by Montroc. This will all be happening at Rook Live. So if you haven't got your tickets yet and you're in the Toronto area, Tuesday, May 7th, get your tickets before they sell out in the next few days by going to Eventbrite.
I was going to say, there's also one other way, and I know you don't like explaining this one, but it
feels so difficult.
For anyone who's familiar with Eventbrite, which I think so many people are, you just go to eventbrite.com and search Rook, and it'll be the first item that pops up after the sponsored ads, let me add, and you can just click and get your tickets directly through Eventbrite.
Do you see anything happening here on my face?
I do.
You haven't said anything about
I know, because I didn't want to, deter you from continuing this path that you're on of growing it again.
You support it.
I do.
You support the growth.
I've always supported
Super P's not speaking to me
hair
anymore, because like today I was about to come and do the essay. She was like, and you didn't shave. Like, just like, stop talking to me. And I can't wait for the opinions. I posted a picture a couple of days ago. Now I just have tahrish.
No, the question
is,
is,
I don't have a real beard yet, but I already got some comments like, "What's going on? You're growing it back, but it looked so good." When I shaved it,
I'm sure you have people saying you're growing it back. Oh my God, yes.
No, listen, no. When I shaved it, it was a disaster. Everybody was like, "How dare you? You were so great before." And now it's growing back. It's like, "But you were so handsome without the beard."
The question is, are you going to have a beard at Rook Live too?
That's the question.
That's the question.
Only people who attend Rook Live too, then everybody who watches it on video will know. Yeah, I'm kind of enjoying growing it back. I'm not gonna lie, but you know what's great about being a man is you can shave it and then grow it back.
You've got all the freedom.
You don't have that luxury of having facial hair.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Well. All right. Before we get to our two feature guests. I mean, it's always a question of, there's so much going on in the world, but certainly if Rook is our program and our network is about conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora, the conversation, if social media is any indication, and it isn't always, we know the world is not Twitter, but if there is a conversation that's happening right now on social media, and even anecdotally I've talked to, it's the situation with Toomaj Salehi, who, weirdly enough, before the uprising that happened as a result of the killing of Mahsa Amini, we know all that's happened in the last couple of years. I think Toomaj Salehi was a big name to those who would follow him, certainly fans of rap and music and probably some other pop culture fans and some people who would know him politically. But now he is rapidly on his way to becoming an icon because of he's a symbol. He really is a symbol of both resistance and the suppression, oppression, and indeed murderous instincts of the regime. So to catch people up who haven't turned on their phone for the last 3 days, because I think any Iranian would know about this, Toomaj had been imprisoned a couple of times. He was famously imprisoned and we believe tortured and put in solitary and all that for a long period. Released, what was it, a year ago or 8 months ago or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
And then,
a few months short of a year, I think.
Not shy about sharing his opinions, kind of was out there, not as much as he had been before, but out there again.
And there
detained
was that
again.
one viral video that he shared, and he was very open about the experience that he had over the course of the months that he was imprisoned. And then following that, he was imprisoned yet again.
Right.
And when that video came out, I think that was a big concern that a lot of people had. They were all, even commenting on the video saying, we're fearing for the fact that you've put something like this out there and now they're going to come after you again.
The second imprisonment of Toomaj Salehi, the Iranian rapper and activist, didn't come as a massive surprise to people. But this decision by a court in Esfahan
that's right.
did come as a surprise. And the decision is to execute Toomaj Salehi, right? To put him on death row, basically, which has not just sent shockwaves and waves of disgust, sorrow, fear, anger, but also has arguably resuscitated an uprising. My feed is full of organizing. I know there's going to be a rally in Vancouver on Sunday. There's going to be one here in Toronto. People are ready to go back on the streets around the world. So catch us up on what's going on and what happened 2 days ago.
Well, I think you pretty much mentioned everything that's happened. The biggest news was the fact that this verdict had come out, and the shocker was the fact that this verdict came from the court in Esfahan, because as you know, when Toomaj was imprisoned, his lawyers had been very good at appealing the various verdicts that they had been given. They had taken it all the way to the Supreme Court, and I guess the irony here, or what everyone is surprised about, is that it wasn't the Supreme Court who gave this verdict for the execution or the execution order. It's the smaller court in Esfahan that has done that. And there's actually talk of the fact that there's this power struggle now happening between this lower court and the Supreme Court. One thing that's known for sure is that following that Brave video, the publishing of that Brave video, the IRGC and the lower courts were so severely angered that they actually pushed the Supreme Court to kind of be on board with his imprisonment. So I think one of the things that's, got everyone talking and is in fact unprecedented is for the fact, and I say unprecedented for legal proceedings, but keeping in mind that these are always sham trials and kangaroo courts, but even for these kangaroo courts, it's unprecedented that you'll have a lower court overstep and give out a verdict without the Supreme Court being on board. Now, to be fair, the Supreme Court hasn't come out and said this, but typically a verdict like this is something that would come from a higher court as opposed to a lower court, which is the one in Isfahan.
There's a sense that everyone's in cahoots on this, and on the regime side, right? Does a court somewhere in Isfahan actually operate independently, and when it comes to Toomaj Salehi,
Well, that's
does
the
it
thing.
like it's like the band of mullahs in Tehran don't know about this, or are not getting phone calls?
I mean, I don't know what the system's like and who's getting
Come
phone
on.
calls and whatnot,
Come
but
on, yeah.
usually, a decision like this would come from a higher level court. Now, the other thing is there's also talk of, the courts are doing this as a power play. And how does that work? Well, as many people know, Iranian police and the IRGC have intensified their presence on the streets to enforce the mandatory hijab and Islamist dress codes and things like that. And so many are saying that this verdict is actually a calculated move to signal the regime's strength and determination to suppress any form of dissent.
Yeah, well, that's explanation number one.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ongoing specter of this is what will happen to you. I mean, this is what, I just did this opening essay about Islamic Republic not being Iranians. And I still think that there's this, there's a bit of an attitude from people who don't quite get this, that, well, if the Iranian people really wanted to get rid of this regime, don't you think that, why weren't there millions and millions in the streets if they really hate this regime so much? It's fucking terrifying, because anything you do, this is what a dictatorship, an authoritarian police state is, right? You and I can't go visit our family. Well, I can't,
Exactly.
I mean, this is the whole point. And so, of course, you're going to make an example of the most high-profile sort of dissenters to say, hey, mothers and fathers out there, if your kid has any inkling that they want to do something like Toomaj, this is what's going to happen, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't.
And we've been through this. I got to catch myself when I say I don't get it. From a PR standpoint, why poke the bear that is the global movement against this regime by doing something this disgusting again? But I have to remember that this has happened many, many times. And, cast our minds back to 3 or 4 years ago on this show talking about Navid Afkari, a well-known athlete who Iranians, even before the Mahsa Amini, the Women Like Freedom uprising, were rallying around, do not execute this man. And we were basically all saying, they're not going to do it. How would they possibly, with all this attention, they're not. And they went and did it.
That's right.
Right? So,
well, not only that, but I mean, we've talked about this many times on this program, and I know it's a topic of conversation with many Iranians, but it's not even just inside Iran anymore. We've talked about the fear of, whether it's journalists or activists or whoever it is, even outside of Iran, where they're having death threats or physical altercations.
They're exporting the fear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think, when we were talking about a show of strength, I think that's exactly what this is. They've been so successful, and by they, I mean the Islamic Republic, they've been so successful in instilling this fear into exactly what you said, so the parents of these children.
There's another theory as well, which you probably have heard, and in fact, a couple of our team members here talked about it, which is, or advocate for it, which is that this is a distraction, that the Islamic Republic does these kinds of things to capture the attention of people when they're trying to distract us from something else. It's not clear to me entirely what they're distracting us from at this point.
I mean, that theory applies to the regional instability with what's going on with Iran and Israel, and
but they seem to love that.
That's the thing.
They're savoring it. They're not, they're savoring their battle with the enemy, Israel, and all this kind of stuff.
I don't even think they're all they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, it could be all three of these things that we've mentioned and so much more. Right. It's the fact that these are tactics of the Islamic Republic. They, try to instill this fear on many different fronts. They want to show strength in one way and then have everyone super freaked out in another way, and then extend into places like Canada and
again,
so on.
The reason why this well-known musician and spokesperson for a lot of young people is on death row is not because he, physically harmed, murdered someone or engaged in fraud or robbed a bank, or it's simply because he is expressing a point of view that is at odds with the regime.
That's right.
Let that sink in, folks. This is what we're dealing with here, over and over again with this place, right?
Now, I know we often joke about this and say that it's the doom and gloom when we talk about Iran, but I do want to point to a little bit of hope in the midst of all of this.
Right.
And that's in the sense that, we have heard from Toomaj Salehi's lawyers that he has 20 days to appeal this ruling, and his lawyers are very fiercely going to try and appeal this. And also, this whole theory about the power struggle might actually play in favor of Toomaj, because if there is any sort of miscommunication or disagreements between the lower courts and the upper courts, that might actually play into the favor of Toomaj. And I think with what we've seen in the last 24 hours with Iranians worldwide rallying and sharing this information and posting about Toomaj and, again, trying to be advocates, hopefully we'll...
And you don't even have to... It's got to be said, because I've seen some sort of dissenters of the dissenter, you don't have to agree with everything Toomaj has ever said,
exactly.
or ideologically be on the same page with him, or like his fucking music or whatever. It's like this person, this human, who is actively showing their disdain for a regime that we all have disdain for, is going to pay with his life potentially. No one. I mean, it's truly madness. Every once in a while, I say this on this program, that we as Iranians, even with something like this, everybody sort of hangs their head and goes, vaziat, that kind of thing. What's vazife?
Like obligation.
Oh, that. Also vazife. Stop laughing, Super P. You are not even speaking to me because I have a beard now again. Yeah, I mean that what was I saying?
You were saying
with my own Persian.
You were saying that, and I agree with you, that we've almost been so used to seeing this that we're normalized.
It's normalized. Yeah. That it's kind of like that these things happen, and you just think about it for a moment. How crazy this is, how insane this is, and how I would never. I mean, there's echoes of it sometimes in the Western world where, people are being arrested or detained or whatever because of something they're saying, and you kind of go, oh boy, we have an example of what that looks like. By the way, it's the Islamic Republic. All right, anything more on that?
I think we'll end off on the hopeful notes. Hopefully.
All right, thanks, Pegah. So
thank you.
And let's just again, May 7th, Rook Live 2. I should also mention next week on this program, the legendary Nusha Fareen will be here in the Rook Studio for a feature interview, her first major interview in English, and I'm very excited for that.
I am a big fan, so yes, looking forward to that.
You would be a fan.
I am, of course I am.
Because...
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Actually, I'm a fan too. I'm just a fan of her whole story. Can't wait to have her here on the show. Looking forward to it. All right. You can get Rook on any of our platforms. They include Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, CastBox, Telegram in Persian and in English, YouTube, Instagram, etc. Do subscribe to us on any of our platforms. And of course, you can support us by attending our Rook Live or going to our website and pressing the Support Us button, where you can become a Rook patron. We are very, very grateful to those who continue to be patrons of our program and be Rook members. Okay, let's get to our two guests today I'm excited about, and the case for wellness-based medicine. My first guest today is a licensed, board-certified naturopathic doctor specializing in integrative functional medicine for women. She's also a popular fitness instructor, a yoga and meditation practitioner, and a Persian Zumba coach. Dr. Afrouz Demeri was born and raised in Iran during the Iran-Iraq War. Her family left Iran when she was 9 years old, relocated to Australia and later Canada. Afrouz's educational journey began with a Bachelor of Science in Cognitive Neuroscience neuroscience from the University of British Columbia. Then, driven by a passion for holistic wellness, she pursued a career in naturopathic medicine, receiving her degree from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. Later, she studied at the Ontario College of Homeopathic Medicine and became a doctor of homeopathic medicine and health sciences. She is the founder of the first online fertility optimization course, Trimester Zero, along with other courses focusing on holistic hormones and detoxification. She actively shares her knowledge and insights through various platforms like Instagram and YouTube. And right now, Dr. Afrouz Demeri joins me from Orange County today. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's so great to have you on the show. We've known each other for many, many years. Congratulations on all of your accomplishments and success, even though you've abandoned us up here in Canada.
I miss Toronto. Oh my gosh. Yes, over 20 years I've known you. I can't believe it. I feel so old.
We were both little children, clearly, when we met. That's the only way to explain it. This episode is focusing on wellness-based medicine as opposed to illness-based. And we're going to be speaking to another practitioner like yourself after you, Siamak Shirazi. But first, I want to ask you about some of your recent activities because they're too good not to mention. You just did a fitness dance event, which I know you've done before, called Roqe for Charity. It looks awesome. And you also have your sister and mom involved. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so my upbringing was always dance and music. I grew up in Iran. I love to dance, as we Persians do. And I love the arts. I always played the piano, and I actually wanted to pursue dance and music. So it's a huge passion of mine. My dad played like 15 instruments, and we had a whole room of instruments growing up. And I always would joke that I'm going to become a pianist or I'm going to become a dancer. And he would always be like, "Oh, that's just a side gig, right? You're going to become a lawyer, doctor, or engineer." So it's always been in me. I think I have so many baby pictures of me just dancing on tables. And so when I became the doctor and got the approval from the Persian dad, I was like, okay, now I can do what I really love, which is dance to music that I love. And now I've been able to be blessed to combine these two things that are my passions, which is my meditation, my church, I say, is music. You put a song on, or sometimes when I'm down, I'll just sit on the piano and I'll play. And so it's been fun to find local people here who are like, "Hey, can you come and teach a class to Persians?" And I'm like, yes, it's fitness, it's fun, it's connection, it's community. So yeah, I have my patients who come to these events and they love seeing me outside my doctor hat.
I guess it's pretty self-explanatory, but you're caring for charity. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so all the proceeds we pick different charities to give back to, and it's just a good excuse, honestly, to get people out.
Afrouz, there's a few things that you said there that I want to pick up on. First of all, I know you're a longtime Zumba instructor and your love of dance. In fact, I think the first time I ever met you, you were dancing at a Persian Mahmoudi. I have an image of you, even if it was 20 years ago. But
Absolutely.
You are also, as part of your practice, you're a real advocate of moving and dancing as preventative medicine, yes?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you get up right now and you start shaking your hips, can you be stressed? Can you be worrying about what your next interview is and that you're not prepped? It's just, there is a connection to this. And science has shown that dancers have better brain function. They have better longevity because they're able to remember choreography. So, I mean, I could go on and on about the effects of music, different vibrations, frequency, energy that now we see with music. But for me, honestly, it's my antidepressant. Like I really look forward to, and I always tell people, move, do something you like. Don't just go to the gym and do weights if you hate it, because you're going to be thinking about when is this over? And those negative thoughts that you have an effect. So for me, dance works. It's sweating, it's detoxifying. I'm always smiling. It's so hard for me not to smile.
And more, I guess you would prescribe that over running on a treadmill or something.
Yes, I would. But as women get older and as men get older, we lose muscle. So it is mostly cardio. So I always say to my, older ladies, even including myself, when you're perimenopausal, you don't want to just be dancing and that's it. You need to build muscle. And so doing dancing with weights or, doing something that has stretch and flexibility involved is so important. And this is one of the root causes of most of our diseases and inflammation that causes every itis
Right.
is lack
Right.
of movement. So yes, it is something I prescribe.
The other thing about these dance events that I was saying, I wanted to untangle from what you were just saying. I mean, based on what I've seen the videos of them anyway, is it's mostly to Persian music, like it's like Shahram Shapare or something playing in the background when you're doing this.
Totally.
And
Absolutely.
so this is interesting. I mean, you are somebody who left Iran as a little kid, but you're so very Iranian in terms of the things you love, the music you love, as you say, the dance, etc. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about how your philosophy on how staying so Iranian, despite the fact that you've been a Western kid for most of your life, has happened to you.
If I recall, you used to make fun of me and
For all kinds of reasons, not just that.
But I would say it's how we were brought up. So even though we left Australia, on the weekends, we would go to Persian school just in case my parents thought we would go back. So I had to wear a rusari on Saturdays and Sundays in Australia and go to Iranian school and learn the Quran and have tests come from Iran. And maybe that had something to do with it, that I was still in the Iran world, even though I was out. But I think having strict parents, to be honest, who we only spoke Farsi and daddy. So I'm Zoroastrian. So most of the time we spoke not even Farsi at home. My grandmother barely spoke Farsi to us. And there was always music. So I have to give my dad credit that we were always dancing at home in the afternoons. And my friends would come over and they'd be like, what is up with your family? Like just the four of you? So I think it's how we were brought up. And my parents were always trying to keep the traditions, keep us going to our Zoroastrian temples and go to all the events. And at the Zoroastrian temples, because my dad was so religious, I had to do all the performances and, dance to Shalom Shapara on stage. So growing up, this was like I had this duality, these two worlds, wanting to be this cool Australian kid, with baggy clothes and like dyed hair and being really cool. But then I also had this other side to me at home that I didn't want any of the Australian kids knowing about.
And,
And
what's your philosophy with your own kids? I mean, you have a couple of, they're not so little anymore, but do you teach them Farsi? Is that important? Are they, I mean, that they can speak to grandma in Persian or something?
You hit a soft spot there, or you hit a wound in me in that I am not thrilled about how things came out, in that it's not the expectation I had. Okay. So no, when they were younger, because my parents were around, they spoke Farsi, they understood Farsi. And then when I moved and now I'm married to a Mexican man, we don't get to speak Farsi as much. And it's definitely a sore spot for me, where now they're older and they've lost that. So I still speak to them, but my son, the second one, he's like too cool for it, or he'll be like, I need to learn Spanish, mom, because everyone here speaks Spanish. Farsi is like one country. And so I know my dad's not alive right now to like give him a little whack and be like, what are you talking about? But no, the traditions.
Well, he's not wrong that Spanish is going to be a much more handy around the world for him than Persian overall. But,
Yeah, but there's just something in us that like, I don't want it to die. I don't want it to, it's hard to explain. It's almost like the lineage that I was raised and brainwashed maybe isn't going to continue. I have that fear. I have that like, oh, I wish I could go back and do it differently, but I don't want to live with that regret. So I tell them that. I say, it's really hard from mom on. Don't call me mom, and they're just testing me all the time. Let's say it that way. They have an English name for me. They call me Leslie. Because I don't like Leslie. Because to me, it's like, oh, no offense to my beautiful Caucasian friends, but to me, it's like, no, I'm not Leslie. So they tease me.
Wait a second. Where does Leslie come from?
They just think it's a very white name, and they know that I'm like, don't want them to be.
That's the best. I now know what I'm going to call you for the rest of the interview. It's Dr. Leslie. That's fantastic. As we segue into talking about you being a naturopathic doctor and wellness based medicine, you mentioned your dad, and you mentioned your dad being proud of you as a doctor. I'm just curious, when you sort of segued from Western science, etc., to going into the naturopathic route. Did your dad have an opinion of that? I mean, was it as laden with the status that Persians feel for doctors, or was that an issue for him?
It was an issue. He was definitely not thrilled because in my valedictorian days, I said that I was going to be a neurosurgeon and I love surgery, And so when I said naturopathic, to the day he died, he still couldn't even pronounce it. He used to say, my doctor is a naturopathic doctor. And I'd be like, Dad, please just say it right. And I would spell it out. And so he really wasn't thrilled. But then afterwards, when he saw, because he would go to the doctor and he was very conventional. He kind of lived out of fear of didn't want to die from having a heart attack. And heart disease was big on his mind because his dad had died of heart attack and his mom had died. So anything the doctor said was way over anything his daughter would ever tell him, which I think Persian parents are like that. My mom would be like, oh, this doctor said in India that I shouldn't eat gluten because I have this. And I'd be like, Mom, I told you that like 10 years ago. But, I was always their little girl. And yeah, it was hard. He definitely wasn't thrilled, because I was moving from Vancouver to Toronto and he'd never heard of this. But there was this trust of, he would always say, pick one thing and be the best at it, which I know probably not how psychology today is with kids. But he was like, if you're going to do it, become the best and really be good at it. And so that was his only thing is.
But his, God rest his soul, his skepticism is actually helpful as because that's part of the reason we're having this conversation today, that it isn't a natural given that naturopathic medicine is on the same par or should be, etc., or even more helpful in many cases. So let's get into this. I mean, on your website, you say that you've seen all aspects of the healthcare system as a product of being someone who's using it yourself, who's studied it, who's a mother, etc. You say, to be frank, it's kind of a mess. You're talking about Western healthcare, I guess, whether in the U.S. or Canada. How is it a mess in your view?
It's a mess because here in the U.S., 1 out of 2 Americans has a chronic disease. If you look at Alzheimer's, because I'm very interested in the brain, because we can't get a brain transplant. So brain health is important because once it gets messy, there's not much you can do. You can't just go and do surgery and remove a part if someone's memory goes. And Alzheimer's and dementia is something that is so on the rise that it's going to beat heart disease. It's going to beat everything. And so because 1 out of 2 of us is going to have a chronic disease, conventional medicine is amazing for anything acute. And I use it all the time, right? My daughter was born blind in one eye, and my God, her sick kids hospital is like my everything. I remember feeling so grateful for these surgeons, for these doctors. Anytime you've been hit by something, you go to the ER. I mean, we need conventional medicine. Absolutely.
Anything acute. What does it mean? Anything acute?
So like, let's say you have a car accident and you're hit and you're bleeding. Do not call me. Right. You go to the hospital. There's other acute things. So once in a blue moon, let's say you have a really bad headache and you're like in the middle of nowhere, take your Advil or Tylenol if you're not allergic, right? But if you keep getting headaches before your period every month, let me give you my symptoms that I was going to the doctor for before I chose this. I was getting cramps so bad that at UCI, I fainted twice and they took me into the hospital because my cramps were so painful. I would vomit. I would, TMI, but let's just say things were coming out at both ends because it was like death. And this is year after year. And many girls have period cramps. I know you're blessed to not have to experience all the torture that we go through. And I would be really a different person before my period, just moody, irritable. I would cry at everything. And I would go to the doctor and I'd be like, this is not normal. Help me. And he'd be like, it's normal. All girls have it. Here's the birth control pill, And then the next time I would go in with chronic yeast infections. Girls get that. Here's an antifungal. And I had these chronic coughs that would come out of nowhere and I wasn't sick. And I'd be like, why do I have this? Anti-cough, chronic ear infection since I was a baby in Iran, antibiotics. I lived on amoxicillin.
Yeah.
So I was actually proud of myself because I was pre-med and I'm like, I'm going to be a doctor and I'm on 5 different medications, and I became so swollen from all the all the drugs I was on that I would then go in and be like, I'm overweight. Can you give me something for my weight issues? And then I was put on, oh my gosh. Anyways, you get the list. We're not really helping. We're band-aiding with one thing, and then there's two other symptoms, and then we're like, oh shoot. So that's the mess I talk about.
Right,
Is no one
right.
really asking, why does this person have this?
Right.
It's just, what is it?
And
we have a lot of what doctors.
And why this path has been so personal for you in terms of naturopathic medicine. You also say that it's hard to sort out health facts from fiction. And I thought that was an interesting thing to say. What is an example of the kind of fiction you see out there in the healthcare that concerns you?
I'll name two that I saw this morning. One is that we go on Lipitor or statin medications. These are medications that are heavily given to the population to lower cholesterol. And we think that if someone has not had a previous heart attack, so they are healthy, let's say you and I, we've not had a previous heart attack, that if we lower our LDL, our cholesterol, with a statin, we actually really are reducing our risk highly of having a future event. But did you know that science actually shows that you reduce it by 2.7%, which is not a lot? And they found that olive oil, walnuts, specific kinds of healthy omega fats reduce it more. So, but if you've had a previous event, so you've had a heart attack already, you betcha it's going to increase it more than 50%. So I will put you on those meds based on the facts and the science. But even as a doctor, I wasn't trained on the facts. We get so heavily influenced by big pharma, the pharmaceutical companies, the reps we would have come. That's.
I was going to say, who is selling that fiction then?
It's what you're taught in medical school. And, as a professor myself, I always felt, and I tell this to my kids, because they'll read something, well, it says on Google this. And I'm like, but who wrote that? And then where's the science? And then who wrote that article? And who funded that article?
Right.
We don't have the time as doctors to go that deep. I don't have the time.
Right.
But when I did have the time and I really looked into it, and we would have cardiologists come and teach us this, because I worked at UCI at a preventative cardiology clinic. That's why I know these facts, is because the people who write the guidelines have to know their stuff. But I would see how they get influenced. And I was like, I'm not supposed to talk about this stuff, but it's not everything you see and read is the truth. You have to sort of be smart enough to ask yourself, who's writing this? Who funded this? What other articles didn't get published because they didn't go along with what we should say? So that's one, is statin medication. The other is antacids. Does any doctor tell their patient that antacid increases your risk of heart attacks and strokes? So maybe you should figure out why you have this GERD or this burning sensation in your stomach, and not just think you're okay taking an antacid for 10 years, 20 years. So there's so many of these.
Is that's the thing that you take for heartburn? It starts with a P?
Purple pill.
It's a little yellow. Yeah.
The PPIs, the antacids.
I shouldn't be taking those.
Maybe not long term.
Forget the interview. Just tell me what I should be taking. No,
I always say babies have a lot of acid. As we get older, an old, woman in her 80s or 90s, you'll see they don't want to eat a lot. They can't digest a lot of food. They don't have a lot of digestive enzymes. So it's not like our stomach acid decides, I want to make more as he gets older. No, if things are not moving down and they sit in your stomach, they're going to start burning. So there's other ways to figure out, why is this burning happening? So that's what I'm interested in, is figuring out what is causing these symptoms. And there's a lot of symptoms that people have. They have fatigue, they can't sleep, they're overweight, their memory is not good, they're moody, they have that's why I call myself a holistic doctor, honestly, because I treat a whole list of problems. Mm-hmm. Instead of just saying, oh, your heart problems, go see the cardiologist. Oh, you have kidney problems, see the nephrologist. You're one person. Everything is linked together. And often, go ahead.
I was just thinking about this as a sidebar. It sometimes it's in the way that the information is delivered too. that can be so confusing to the patient or consumer. Or I had an event recently where my head was, I don't know if it was sinuses or something, but my ears were blocked. And, I kept on trying to, like when you get off a plane, pop your ears, And so I went to my doctor and he said, okay, you got to go to an ENT. But first you have to have an audio test if you're going to go to an ENT. So I went for an audio test, and the guy, I don't know if he was having a bad day, but he was kind of crusty, and he was like, okay, just sit there. And I already know that from years of playing music in a band and stuff, that in my left ear I have some hearing loss, in certain frequencies. But we do the test, and at the end of it, he basically says, he says, this is bad, and like, he got me really depressed. He's like, this is terrible, and you should speak to an ENT about hearing aids. And I was like, hearing aids, really? Not that I have anything against that if people need it, but and he said, yes, because this is going to lead to dementia, right? And I was like, dementia? Like, he was like, yes, because if you don't have the right hearing. And so then, just out of circumstance, I have this a second appointment. I have an appointment with an ENT who requires me to go to another place to do an audio test. So I had to do it again within 3 weeks. And what was interesting is I remember the chart. The results were exactly the same, right? So the audio tests were the same in both cases. But this person said, yeah, pretty normal. You're doing okay for your age. You have some noise-related hearing loss in your left ear. And I was like, I don't need a hearing aid. She's like, no, who told you that? And I said, I'm not getting dementia. He was like, no, you're fine. I mean, you have a bit of hearing loss, keep checking it every couple of years. And so I thought this is so profoundly interesting that these two people, admittedly, I don't think they're doctors, they're audio people. And the second time it was the ENT who was telling me this isn't a big deal, but they're delivering the same information and having a profoundly different impact on me in terms of the way they are giving me that information. So it can be confusing about what we are supposed to trust and not trust, Afrouz.
Yeah, if I can actually, thank you for bringing this up. There's actually research done on delivery, same treatment plan they did to the patient. So they had a doctor write a prescription and hand it to the patient. So it's not like anything major. But one of the studies, they looked at how the delivery of the prescription was done. And was there touch and eye contact from the doctor? So a little bit nicer versus the doctor was writing it down and just hands it to the patient, right, a little dismissive. They found that the people who had the high touch experience actually got symptoms improving faster. I mean, there's so many studies like this where what you're saying really matters. It can actually, maybe you're not that much of an anxious person or maybe so afraid, but imagine if someone with really high anxiety and fear gets told, which many of my patients get told, oh, you need an egg donor, you're way too old, there's no way you're going to get pregnant. That's called a nocebo effect. There's always placebo, which I always say it's better to have a placebo effect. If it's going to work,
yes,
let it work. Yeah. But no one really realizes that as doctors, we have this authority. We have this thing that we think we are better at than others who don't know health facts. And if I dismiss or give you false hope, I'm criticized. But if I actually give you the opposite, it's okay. I was just, making sure, just like,
Right,
so absolutely,
right.
You have to be very careful who you're asking and have the confidence and boundaries to go, wait a second, this is just their thought, their opinion.
Right.
I can come over everything. I'll give an example of a family member who had stage 4 cancer. And I remember being with her at the oncologist's office, who was really just like you. You have 6 months left to live, were his words. And this woman got up and said, and I remember being like, what are you saying? Hold on, the doctor's still talking. And, as a doctor, I was like, I felt disrespectful. But now I look back at the power of the mind of this woman who did not want to believe what she was being told. Now, the statistics, yes, were correct. This person had 6 months left to live. If I look at the stats, 6 years later, she's perfectly healthier than me. But I always asked her, like, how did you get over this? Because she didn't do chemo, she didn't do the full radiation. And she said, it's all up here. What you believe is so powerful. And so, yes, I love that you said that. So I hope people watching can take back their power in some ways and always get a second opinion or even a third opinion.
Yeah.
And remember that you are in control of so much.
Well,
Like
I
you are.
didn't book the second test intentionally. I had to get it, and thank God that I did, because I was really, I mean, it affected me. By the way, yes, I am anxious enough that it'll affect my like. If you ask the people here at Rook, they were just like, "Oh God, I mean, because it plays into all kinds of ideas of mortality, and I mean, somebody says you're going to get dementia. You're kind of like, what? What? I thought I was relatively young. What's happening? So,
Yeah.
Also, though, in terms of what you just said, you're such an interesting person, because you do, as you're a self-proclaimed unique blend of Eastern and Western in terms of your medical practice. Tell me how you believe, since you are in the naturopathic area now, how do you believe Western science, which you're the blend of, how did traditional medicine or Western science, your studies there, help you in this naturopathic field?
Great question. I just have more tools and I have an understanding of being able to label, but then also realize what harm am I doing by the labeling. So I would say the first 10 years of my practice, I was much more traditional. Even though I was naturopathic, we're still taught to be evidence-based. In those 4 years, we studied just as much physiology, anatomy, all of the things that are studied. But instead of using maybe medication, we'll use herbs, or we'll use nutrition, or we'll use lifestyle. And then I still thought, well, I'm kind of still doing the same thing. It's just what we call green allopathy, which means like green style or a healthier version of the same thing. And then when I came to UCI, University of California, Irvine, I became the first naturopathic doctor to be director there. Then it was like all eyes are on you. You cannot do anything that's flaky, woo-woo medicine. And you can't say energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all science. And I really appreciated that, because I had to kind of play a different role and use medicine in a different way. And then COVID hit. And this is when I realized, wait a second, everyone's so scared. And all that they're telling us, you can only use these medications, these drugs. That's it. You can't do anything else because we have to follow protocol. And I was like, but this isn't helping. These meds are not helping. And then I would call the Asians in China and I'd learn Chinese medicine, and the Chinese were helping their patients and we were translating. So long story short, it was really nice to have the tools to bring inflammation down quickly. When sometimes my patients, I have CEOs of companies that come in for backache. They're not interested to talk to me about their stress, how they feel, their relationship problems, why they're cheating. They don't care. They're like, fix me right now. I don't have time. Right. And so I meet them where they're at. I'm not going to say, well, let's change your diet. Let's try a dairy-free diet. Let's do this. Let's do that. So it really is about, what is that person's awareness of self? What did they want? Where are they seeking help and guidance from me? Who am I to say, well, I don't think you should be on that medication? I will give them that informed consent.
Sorry, you lost me. Why wouldn't you be the one to tell them, actually,
Because
what about your relationship problem and your diet and all
no.
these other things, rather than a quick fix?
Yes. As a doctor, I've learned, when you don't have the mandate and that is not really the interest of that person, there's resistance. If they're not ready, let's say I bring up something from your childhood that you're like, don't go there. I'm not ready, right? I didn't come to you for that. So what I do with patients is I ask the questions, but I can tell when there isn't that mandate given to me. And they're like, look, I came to you for this. And I'll say, well, in my experience, I've found backaches and back pain to be very highly linked to stress. I myself know this 100%.
Right.
Especially if you're young and you start getting backaches, it's not because of just the way you're sitting and this. You ask yourself, what's been happening in your life? How's life? And if they're like, wow, that's so interesting, I've noticed that, yes, this started in my life and that's when these symptoms started. Then it gives me that rapport and that trust that I have to build with that person. It's like a dance. You don't just take someone and say, here, I'm going to show you what you need to do, right? They're usually like, because they don't know what I know. And I don't want to act like I know better than them. I'm actually curious to get to know them. That's what I really do at the beginning. It's more of a 6-year-old mentality. Sometimes my patients are like, oh, this sounds like a psychology intake. And I'm like, no, just see me like a 6-year-old that's just asking a lot of questions of like, I'm just trying to get to know you.
I love that.
Because
I love that.
sometimes, just like you said, you know what's wrong, but you're actually looking for a problem that's not really a problem. And if I label you with a problem and say you have auditory loss and you're going to get dementia, and then we start fixing that, I've taken you away from health and wellness, and I'm focusing on what's not right. And that to me is not health. Health is not getting rid of things. Health is focusing on what brings Jian joy, what makes you smile, what makes you relaxed, what makes you feel fulfilled in life, not just preventing death. But what if you got to death and you look back and you're like, well, yeah, I lived 80, 90, 100 years. I did it. No, you're going to be like, I lived a good life. I mattered. I belonged. I connected. I felt love. I felt gratitude. I have no regrets. I'm interested in that kind of life for my patients, not for their lab results just to look good.
That's beautifully said. And I'm, in terms of your current practice, you say we are transcending what we learned in medical school and realizing the old answers are not enough. I mean, we've touched on this a little bit, but what are some of the old answers that were never enough, quite frankly?
Well, we can go way back in the 1870s where they used to think disease was like this entity that entered you and they would go like try to get it out of you. I mean, we used to think disease has this existence, that it's a thing that you have, like you have depression, you have anxiety. But really, all it is a word. It's nomenclature. If I tell you there's someone who's hopeless, helpless, doesn't want to eat, doesn't want to have sex, overweight, doesn't want to hang out with anyone, you're going to say he has depression, right? But does he really have depression, or do we call it depression? And why? There's nothing that tells you the why. There could be so many causes. He could be living in Vancouver like I was and pretty depressed because I never had vitamin D and I didn't know how important vitamin D was. It could be that, again, in Vancouver, I loved my sushi and I had so much tuna that my mercury in my blood was 8. You shouldn't have any mercury in your blood, right? So I had mercury toxicity.
So are you saying that traditionally and perhaps still in conventional medicine, people are the medical practice is too quick to put a label on something? It's too quick to make a judgment. This is what you have. This is what we're dealing with.
We're trained to give codes. So they're called ICD codes. And insurance won't let me here order a vitamin D unless I know your vitamin D has been low because I don't want to pay for it. And I go, how can I know it's low without ordering? So patients have to pay sometimes out of pocket so I can prove. So prevention is not a thing they're interested in. I can't order, here that you're supposed to check cholesterol levels in kids and like 12 and above. But insurance often will say, well, if they're not obese, then they're fine, right? So we have to almost get really sick in order then to get tests covered. My another family member was rectally bleeding for years, and she wouldn't get a colonoscopy in Canada because she was young and she looked healthy. Oh, you're fine. It's probably just hemorrhoids. And ended up being rectal cancer stage 3. So my point is, yes, we just aren't listening. I think and I don't blame my doctors, they really have to be able to pay for their living. If they have 7 minutes, how can I get to know everything in 7 minutes or 5 minutes?
Yeah. But also when you say, Afrouz, you say, / Leslie, when you say the philosophy of care, I care about the whole person. I'm not trying to be sassy here, but I mean, if somebody comes in and has a sniffle, do you need to care about the whole person, or can you say, okay, you probably caught a bug, or you've got a virus or something?
Yeah, I usually say, what's the big deal about this? I have people who were like, my nails are chipping. And when I was like first graduated, I'd be like, oh, that's this deficiency, let's fix it. But sometimes I'm asking my patients, what would happen in your life if you didn't worry about this too much? If you just moved on and like focused on something that actually, maybe philosophically, that's just how I think, don't dwell on something.
Stop thinking about the sniffle? Is that what you mean?
Maybe. Just you'll get over it.
How could you stop? You're sniffling.
sniffle away. But it's like, can you be okay with the sniffle? Because God forbid one day you're in real pain and really suffering, or you lose a parent, or, sometimes we over pathologize
You know
every
who's the
single.
worst at this? Iranians. I think
Absolutely.
because I've said this before on the show, and I'm going to mention it to Siamak too. I find it very interesting that some of my friends and even a couple of people who work with us here who've come more recently from Iran, and in the Canadian healthcare system, which you would know, we I've realized there's kind of a presumption that if you're not feeling well, you got a sniffle, say you're not feeling so well, you let it you let it linger for a few days before you go to the doctor, first of all. And even when you do go to the doctor will probably say, come back to me in a week and see,
Yeah.
The Iranians tend to say, I mean, as soon as there's like, I've got a sniffle, boru doctor, like you have to go to the doctor. I don't know. I guess this is something that, especially the people who have the resources, thankfully in Iran, can do. They go right to the doctor. But it's so interesting to me how culturally different that is. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, but I think it depends, because my grandma would go and get like araq nana or golgav zabun or gole this and make these teas and make us like drink nasty stuff that we're like, no, 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 we're fine, we're fine.
Right.
Then when
There's
I
that
moved to
too. Yes. Yeah.
Australia, I found in Australia, it was like we didn't have that community. We didn't have that like herbalist grandma around. And so then it was fear. And it's like, oh my God, this could be big. Let's just, it's just not knowing. So my mom and dad took us, and that's when I got, antibiotics. I lived on antibiotics. They were like, this is a virus, but it doesn't matter. Just in case it turns into a bacterial infection, let's give it to her. So yes, we do make bigger deals out of things, but there are Iranian women who also suppress a lot.
Yes.
So
Yes.
because they suppress a lot of emotional things, the physical things are like a cry for help.
Yeah.
So when they come to me and they're like, I'm losing all my hair, I know inside it's stress, but I can't tell them, well, if you would leave your husband, your hair would probably stop falling, because that's not going to help them.
Yeah.
But then they don't want to necessarily address that. They want me to fix their hair because that's the only thing they feel like they can control in life. And things that fall, like our nails, our hair, it's important, but it's not a pathology that is going to really make you die. Like our vital organs are way
Yeah.
important. So,
Yeah.
and yes, hair will go down, and I say, okay,
But
let's see.
while we're on the note of Iranians,
Yeah.
and it's something we touched on earlier with your dad, there is a lot of respect and deference afforded to doctors.
Yes.
Putting traditional doctors, though, on a pedestal as authority figures,
Mhm.
you've made the case. I've seen you before say that can be problematic.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Even me, I always tell my patients, listen, get some guidance, and then on your own, figure out, is this what I want to believe? But I remember telling my dad this because he was having stroke symptoms, God bless his soul. And he had so much faith, like loved his doctor. Like if you ever said anything bad about his doctor, I think I remember you always being like the same, right? It's an Iranian thing that you really do respect.
Yeah.
I was like, Dad, you have foot drop, go back. No, he said, I'm fine. He went back and his blood pressure was so high that then, he got called in. But even though I was helping him kind of figure out this isn't normal, he still was resisting. And now I understand that when you have this respect for someone, it can be problematic because your kind of life is like in their hands and everything they say. So they better be on top of it, or things could go wrong. So this unfortunately has happened in my family, where I've been like the advocate, and I would love my patients to be more the advocate and have a guidance and kind of have these dialogues and say, well, what do you think? Like, is this really a problem? And they'll say, well, really, no, that's not really the problem. The real reason I'm here is this. And then so you have to give the opportunity to go a little deeper. But like you said, people who don't really want to go deep usually don't come see me. Like they come, but they're interested in the way I think. And the way I think that's different than maybe a conventional doctor is, I'm really curious as to the origin of the disease. I don't believe that you have depression. I might think you have inflammation.
But that's part and parcel of the preventative part, right? So it's not just let's fix you when you're broken somehow or
Yes.
having trouble,
Yes.
but let's actually prevent the breaking, which
Yes.
is it seems. To be honest, it seems a bit crazy that that's not the way healthcare was created from the
Yeah.
beginning. I mean, why would we create something that's just
Because
responsive
you don't
instead
make
of?
money. Because it doesn't make money. It doesn't make money if we detect cancer in the breast and we don't do mammograms anymore. We have to keep radiating your breast, which we know causes cancer, in order to detect it. And so if we find
Of
something
course,
like,
right.
things that can prevent you from getting breast cancer, like lifestyle, sweating, alcohol reduction, and all of that. When does your doctor tell you how much alcohol affects breast cancer? No, but they'll tell you to get your yearly mammogram to detect it so then they can treat it with chemo and radiation. So, yes, it's a paradigm shift that honestly, in my lifetime, I'm probably not going to see, and I'm sort of the anomaly. I'm the alternative medicine gal, but I hope that more conversations like this at least educates the public to kind of become their own advocate, to ask for more questions and say, wait, is this really true? Like, where is the study for this? Or where's the research on this? Or maybe this doesn't feel good. Half of my patients, they come to me and they're on a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, do you feel good? They're like, no, I went on this. I don't feel any different. And I'm like, well, why are you on it? Even natural stuff, like they'll be taking a probiotic for 10 years. And I'm like, how has it helped? How do you know if it's helping? They're like, I don't know. That they said it's good. It's so a lot of it's marketing. A lot of it is fear-based sales tactics, even in the natural world. So I'm all about less is more, diet, nutrition, mindset, lifestyle, sleep, all the things we give our babies,
Yeah.
to thrive, we often don't give ourselves. And the biggest culprit, I would say, to many of our problems is up here. It's not something that physically decides it's going to go wrong, other than the sniffles and the like things that we're supposed to get. You're supposed to get sick. You're supposed to have a good fever. For God's sakes, when my patients are like, oh my God, I have a fever, I'm like, yes, your immune system works. And they're like, my kid came home from school and he's sick and he's got a fever. What should I do? I'm like, nothing. Just let him have a fever.
Wow, that is very Rochanfect. I can't handle that. That's that.
Well,
I mean, that's
because cancer patients, they can't before they got cancer. I have so many cancer patients where I'll be like, when was the last time you got sick? And they're like, I don't even remember, like 10
huh.
years. Because the immune system needs to mount a response. So either our immune response is like so overreactive, which means allergies, like even pollen or dust makes you think you're going to die and it tries to get it away, or that it starts attacking self, right? So, and a healthy immune system is so important. And it's kind of the root cause of everything,
So
everything
a
that
fever is
causes.
not bad. I've amongst the many things I've learned today. That's
Imagine you have a virus and you put it in the oven and you want to burn it out. That's a good thing. You don't want to turn the oven down and take a Tylenol, unless obviously it's in a kid and it's over 104. But no,
I
healthy.
fancy going out and getting myself a fever at this point to show that I'm still a vital human. You said
I get excited because it's been a while since I've had a fever. So like I'm like, come on, kids, bring something home so I can get
so I know I
sick.
don't
Like,
have cancer. Jeez, it was really instructive. I really appreciate you. You said a few moments ago that it's important to listen to patients, to listen. It caught my ear because, which
I
apparently
love
my
that.
ears still work, by the way. I mean, it does seem self-evident, but is the implication? Do you feel that most doctors and their, in some cases, egos don't actually listen to their patients?
Oh, yeah. It really depends on how well you listen to yourself. The way I treat my patients and the way my practice in 17 years has changed so much has to do with the inner work I've done with myself, life lessons I've learned. So when I'm listening, sometimes I'm listening to the person talking, but you know how we all have that inner voice, that roommate in our head? Like if I say Jian right now in your head, say hello, that voice, he's talking to you all the time, right? When you go home, when you're by yourself, when you went and they said you're going to get dementia, it's that voice that said, what? Right? our dialogue, when I'm listening to my patients, I'm often saying, who is talking? Because a lot of them are afraid, right? They're coming to me because they are afraid.
Yeah.
And if I can quieten that girl's voice and figure out who is this roommate in your head all day making you anxious. If we can quieten her, because I know stress is the number one cause of most disease. So when I'm saying I'm listening to what they're saying, but then I'll question, where does that voice come from? And often they'll say, well, it's from my childhood and my mom and my upbringing. And so I work a lot with therapists and EMDR and really getting to like reprogram this. Because when that voice is quiet and you're present and you are just fully here, even if it sucks and it's not good, but you're present and you're not worrying about what's going to happen, or you're not going, oh my God, could this be like what happened before? Am I going to get hurt like before? You're just here. Your body is relaxed. Your nervous system doesn't react and deplete your minerals and vitamins and hormones and mess everything up. So yes, doctors, we don't have time. We don't get trained in that.
You're
I didn't even
humans.
get
You're also humans. That's actually a good reminder. Yeah.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
like, how are you doing, Jian? I know you came here to talk to me about your ear, but like, how's life? Like having that conversation. What's going on in your life? What's stressing you out these days? Is there anything I can help?
But
Are you
see,
confused about
with
anything?
that said, I mean, when you kind of answered this earlier when you talked about the CEO who comes in and
Yeah.
isn't giving you the agency to really go into those places. But I mean, because you talk a lot, I've been watching your videos and you're researching you, even though I've known you for 20 years. You talk about the physical, you talk about the mental, and you talk about the spiritual, all being important in healing. And it does raise the question in me that if somebody comes in and says, hey doc, I've got a lower backache, and
Yeah.
you start talking about spiritual needing to free yourself, I mean, the person might look at you a little odd, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't ever do that, right? But if you are an audiologist and you're going for your ear, of course, we're not going to ask you about, hey, how's your relationship with your neighbor? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Especially if I know you're a musician, right? But I want to make sure there's no extra wax in there. Is there trauma to the, could it be an ear infection? So you
Right.
rule out all the
Right.
medical stuff. But then when most of my patients have already ruled all those out, they've already been to 5 specialists. And that's when they come to me. So they're looking for like understanding. I've had this problem for a long time, and no one seems to figure out what it means, where it's coming from. And so that's this kind of people I see. It's not someone like yourself. Like that's when I would refer you to ENT. I would say, that's not my thing. You go
Right.
there.
Right.
And spirituality, oh my gosh, I don't know if you want to open that can of worms, but
But say I said, uh, I got this lower backache, carte blanche. Spiritual, mental. Tell me, how we
yeah.
can fix this. What comes to mind?
First thing I would say is, when did it start? What's been happening, right? Could there be a triggering event? How has life been? And most often when I ask people that, they'll say in their story, I often ask, the way I see patients is I say, if it's a first patient, and I say, I'm watching a movie of your life, Jian. I haven't read your book, let's say, but let's say you're writing your book,
How dare
write
you?
it for
Yeah.
me. What does your life look like? What would I see? So I'm listening to how they tell their story, right? Are they playing victim? Are they saying the same things about their backache that they also said about this person, that they also said about work? I mean, I can't tell you how many people describe their symptoms with the same words as they'll describe another event in their life. And I'll say, oh, that's interesting. You said this person stabbed you in the back. And now you said it feels like someone stabbing me in the back. That could totally not be related, and who cares? Or it could be. And it could be this like line of trauma that wasn't healed from the past. And the body there's a beautiful book written by a medical doctor called The Body Holds the Score. And our body is water, it holds memories, right? It's not random that it just decides one day, oh, I'm just going to, throw his shoulder out, or I'm just going to have this pain for no reason. There's reasons, but sometimes we want to listen. Sometimes we're like, I don't care, give me that Tylenol. And I'm okay with either. I will give you the pain meds if that's what you want. But if you're interested to understand why it keeps coming back, then I would love to explore that with you. And I have tools to understand, what does it feel like? Well, it feels like I can't do my work. I can't sit anymore. Well, why would that be? How is work? Talk to me about work. I'm not really satisfied with my career, whatever, right? It keeps going. And then you see this person like break it down. I don't know where we're going. And sometimes it's like I'm opening a box and we're both curious and we're both looking inside to see what could be there.
Well, one
So,
of the things that you've said that I really love is that you say that there's things that happen in your practice, like sometimes people get well, get healed, that you can't explain. And I love that because you're a
all the time.
scientist, right? I mean, you're trained to be a science, and then here you are saying, I mean, we don't
No, I
know.
can't. There's been many cancer patients where I'm like ready to, go to their funeral, honestly. My MS patients, like things that I even was taught and believe is incurable. You can't cure this. There is no cure. And then I read this book called Cured, and it's by two medical doctors. And I was like, oh, see, when I see that MD next to it, I'm like, oh, wow, this has credibility. If a medical doctor is writing this, then it must be true,
Right.
right? But then I'm like, wait, this is all the stuff I've been saying for 17 years, right? So now my patients have taught me more than what I read in books. They're the ones coming back saying, look, I cured this. And I'm like, it's not possible. Wait a second. What did you do exactly? And then even when they tell me, I'm still like skeptical, So I have that skeptic because I came from that background, and I have to learn to be open-minded as a doctor, to learn from the truth that's around me and not keep judging it. Because yes, when it gets a little woo-woo, when it gets a little too, oh, I went and had Reiki. Yeah, I still have issues with that. Like, no, that can't work because one person does Reiki to you, nothing happens. The other person cures you. There's no systematic way of measuring. And I like to be able to measure and control it. So if someone puts their hand over you and they heal you, my mind's like, what? That can't be. But I'm learning, I'm still not there yet, to be at least open-minded and not dismiss it when I don't know anything about it. Just because I don't know doesn't mean it's not true.
It really is a great pleasure to get to talk to you and to learn from you on this stuff. Before I let you go, let me ask you a couple of general questions. First of all, you've been talking about how you've been doing this for 17 years. How have you seen attitudes towards natural medicine or wellness-based medicine change in recent years? Because I know there's been a change. There's been more openness to it. Talk to me about your perspective on that.
It's still there. I would say I had to learn the hard way. In Canada, it was hard because I felt like there was a huge, they're here and you're here. And that was really hard because, yeah, your ego gets hurt and you feel like, but I'm helping all these people.
Meaning traditional medical doctors were put on a pedestal and
Oh, yeah.
naturopathic not so much.
Yeah. And so I think in Canada, it's a lot harder because they would take things away from the naturopathic doctors. They're not allowed to do certain things. Whereas I feel privileged. So it is this privileged life I lead here, to be employed by a university and be a director. That's not heard of, especially in Canada. And so I think I got put on a pedestal, not realizing now my ego went the other way. And, we had a $250 million donation to study natural medicines. That's the highest donation ever made to a university. And so then I started to realize, oh, okay, now that your ego feels good and you feel like you're an equal, has it changed how you practice? And it has. What I was doing is more conventional medicine because I wanted to fit in, because I wanted to belong, because I wanted to be what they told me I should be, right? To not lose that position that I was in. It only happened with COVID, thank God, that I left because I realized this is not true to the healing that I think and wellness that's possible for my patients. If I am following the traditional path of using these meds to treat COVID and that's it, I can't give you anything else, I felt stuck. I felt like I can't bring my gift to the world, which is more than the medicine I practice. It's the love I feel. Like I truly care for my patients. And half the time they say they think that's what helps them. Not what I prescribe, not the diet, but just the fact that I can cry with my patients. Like I care. I want to get to know them. And I think that is what a lot of them have said helps is love. Love can be such a beautiful medicine that obviously we have to have boundaries. Like I was told I shouldn't hug my patients, I shouldn't, touch them. And yeah, so I had to like break all the norms and be like, F everything I was taught, just be you, do what
Mm-hmm.
you think helps people. So now I don't see us as me versus them. Here in the US, there's way more union. There is integration, integrative medicine, functional medicine. So many medical doctors now are going to become trained in functional medicine, which is basically what we do. So it is changing. The paradigm and the thinking is changing. But I still definitely get it's usually men that, the patriarchal, like, oh, you're not a real doctor.
Mm.
you know that's totally fine because I understand I used to be that person. I was that skeptic. When I went to naturopathic medicine, I saw this person from Europe. And I remember she was, in Europe, they're way more into holistic and nutritional, but the medical doctors that are trained in homeopathy. And I remember when she said that word, I was like, oh, that's just placebo, like water, there's nothing, snake oil. So I was that person that
Mm.
rolled my eyes and thought I was better than everyone else because I was going to be a neuroscience. So I don't blame it. I think now I know it's just lack of education and I don't take it personally. So
Before I let you go, one of your main goals, stated goals in life, is to make a lifelong impact through healing.
mm,
Afrouz, how do you most assess whether you're having that impact?
that's a great question. No one has ever asked me that. When my patients, when they come back to me and they tell me that they figured something else out on their own, when they tell me, I realized this and I didn't take what you wanted to give me, I did this instead and I feel great. When they own their own journey and they don't need me or they didn't go ask for help, I feel like I've done a really great job by putting them just back into their path and they are leading it. They are not dependent on me. They might come and say, hey, what do you think about this? So that's one. But also, I find when people start giving back to others and their life is less about them, but more about how can I be now of service? So I have all these people who come on my retreats. And I love when they're like, Dr. Demeri, I had a woman who had stage 4 cancer who I'm just making the video for. She's like, I'm going to be okay.
Hmm.
And here I am thinking, oh my gosh, she's in denial. Stage 4 serious.
Mm.
I want to make my life about giving back. I want to help others. I want to transform other people's lives. To me, that is like the highest vibration when you consciously realize there's so much more than the duality of just your life, me, and you are here to be of service. You heal 10 times faster than when you are alone. When you are in community and you want to gather and you want to give back to other people, oh, that love that comes back to you is something else. And science has shown that the number one helper is community, is your relationships with others. So I don't have a objective way of measuring that, but I've seen it and it's very feminine. It's not that, but your question is masculine. You're wanting an answer from me in a masculine way. And the feminine in me says it's hidden, it's sacred. It's not something that you speak about. It's something that happens beautifully, gently, but you don't have the masculine say, oh, that's what it is, right? You hold it sacred to you. Does that make sense? I don't know how to explain it, but
I'm curious. It's an interesting thing how do you
yeah,
assess that you're having an impact through healing? Is a
it's a
masculine
knowing.
thing?
It's a knowing. It's an inner knowing. Because to me,
Mm.
healing is within. It
Mm.
doesn't come from the external. It's not something you
I
do.
mean, your answer is beautiful. It's quite selfless, but the idea that you see it, you're having an impact when they say I don't need you anymore, which is kind of the pretext or the undertone of this whole chat we've been having, which is, I mean, you mentioned it earlier in terms of the profit motive and all of that driving so much of what's happened in medicine in the past. But I mean, the great paradox of what you do is if you do it really well, we
Mm.
won't need you.
Yeah,
Right?
I guess it's like a sovereignty of some sort where there's this inner peace, there's this inner calmness. that they have. And when I witness that, it's not something I verbalize. It's not like, oh my God, now you're this. And they're like, yay. It's just you just witness it because you know it too. And there are times I don't have that. But when I am alone or when I'm by myself and I close my eyes and I just feel my dad or I feel God or I feel presence of just, I'm okay. This is just a temporary life. I'm going to go one day. I'm not attached to my house, my car, my kids, anything. I'm okay. That to me is so precious because when I lose that and I get caught up in my type A personality of this, that, oh my God, the roof's leaking. Oh my God, what if she dies? What if, and that what if I can become sick and I can lose that peace. So that peace for me, internal peace is very sacred. But for someone else, it might be something else. Maybe they're really wanting abundance and they're suffering with work and jobs. So it's like, where are your thoughts? What's happening? But yeah, to be able to impact someone's life and be able to give that. Now, for me as a doctor, for you as a speaker, for you, someone else as an educator, we're all doing the same thing. As I say, we are all walking each other home, just in different ways.
Just don't be afraid of getting sick, because a fever means you're good, means you're doing all right.
We have fevers for a reason. Just like you cut yourself, and what happens?
So excited to learn that. I mean, it's changed my worldview. I swear. I'm
oh my gosh!
I'm gonna go get a fever.
Suppressing every fever. It's amazing how we get scared of everything. I mean, I was vaccinated, but the amount of vaccines a child gets now, it's like we can't get sick at all. Like I remember they were like, no chickenpox, like chickenpox can kill you. Everything can kill you, you know? And it's like, I can see if I wasn't educated enough, I would just never want my kids to get sick. Right. But they're going to have allergies. They're going to have autoimmune disease. Right. Their immune system is so raw that it doesn't know anything because we're over sanitizing and we are cleaning everything with Lysol.
Oh, no. I remember doing an interview a few years ago in modern times, like not that long ago, but about how it was a Scandinavian study that showed it's beneficial for kids to actually get injured in the playground, like to because you grow from that, you learn from that. You can't keep them in a bubble. I mean, it's the same idea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let me just say it's been such a pleasure. I thank you so much. It's great to get you on this program and to hear your insights. Merci. Thanks for doing this today.
Congratulations. I remember when you were starting this and I was like, I love the name, and here you are. Look at you.
Thanks, Afrouz. Khudafez.
Bye.
This is Rook episode 320. Remember, for all things Rook related, our previous episodes, videos, funnies, clips, etc., go to our website, rookmedia.com. All of the episodes that we've ever done are there. All of our different programming is there. And also a link on the front page there for tickets for our Rook Live theater show, Tuesday, May 7th at Theater Aurora. Rookmedia.com. All right, wellness-based medicine. We've just spoken to Dr. Afrouz Demeri. My next guest has walked into the studio. Here he is. My next guest is actually an Iranian-American singer and recording artist, but he also happens to have carved out a significant career and footprint as a major player in the American wellness-based medicine field. He currently owns and operates two dynamic and popular clinics in the northwest of the United States called To Be Well. Dr. Siamak Shirazi is a self-made entrepreneur and philanthropist who has worked in the area of wellness-based medicine since the early 1990s. He obtained a master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine from the Oregon College of Asian Medicine in 1995 and finished his postgraduate studies at the University of Harbin's Medical School in China in the same year. Siamak received the highest clinical degree in the field of acupuncture from Canada's College of Natural Medicine in Montreal in 2008, and was awarded the Doctor of Asian Medicine degree as well. He also holds a certification, I should say, in homeopathic medicine, and is nationally certified and holds a license to practice Chinese medicine in the state of Oregon by the Oregon Medical Board. He has cared for thousands of patients, started several businesses, served on several nonprofit organizations, created many jobs and entrepreneurship opportunities, and has published books in the fields of Chinese medicine and mindfulness. In addition to managing his business enterprise, Dr. Siamak works as a consultant to individuals and businesses and appears as a speaker and lecturer for events worldwide through tobewell.net. And right now, it's a great pleasure to have Dr. Siamak Shirazi with me here in the Rook Studio in Toronto. Hello.
Hello.
Long time coming to get you in the studio.
Right.
You've been on the show from Portland.
Correct.
But
yes.
not in Toronto. Welcome.
What a pleasure to be here.
It's warm outside, but you're wearing at least 4 layers and it's about 3 scarves. Is this part of the wellness being? I mean,
the scarf is actually.
How so?
Not necessarily wellness, but Chinese. Really, it's funny when if you go to like a seminar for Chinese medicine, you see a bunch of people walking around with scarves, regardless of what time of the year.
Is that a fashion choice, or is that something that's good for our health to always wear a scarf?
So one of the ways to protect your immune system, if you will, is to protect your neck and throat.
This is now, I'm getting flashbacks to my mother saying, "Lucht narobirun," stop going outside naked, when of course I'm wearing a lot of clothing, but just not a scarf.
Right.
She was actually buying into Eastern medicine by saying that.
But actually, in Iran, they did have traditional medicine, which goes back centuries. It was not necessarily like doctor-patient relationship. It was more like herbal medicine,
yes,
if you will.
You mean when they were giving kids opium?
Absolutely. I don't know about the opium part.
Oh, okay.
but
you were ready to agree until I said opium.
Yeah, opium.
Let me start there. Actually, there's so much I want to get to with you. I mean, you're an Iranian guy who came to America as a young musician. I know you first as a musician, as a singer. And you still sing and perform. In fact, you've been doing a bunch of new material with our dear Bob Akamini, the Iranian-Canadian guitarist and producer. We'll get to some of that. But are you surprised, given that you started your adult life as a musician, that you've ended up in the path of wellness and owning and operating major clinics in the northwest coast of the United States?
I'm not surprised, but it was something that was a necessary tool for me to live the kind of life that I wanted to live. So let me expand on that.
Sure.
I came to US to go to school, basically, to further my education. I was 20 years old. And
meaning you thought you might return to Iran?
Yes, although I came after revolution.
Yes.
But we all were delusional, thinking that the current government is not going to last very long, and all that stuff. That 40 years later, we're still talking about the same thing. So the idea was, regardless of where I end up, I get higher education. And the quickest way for me to make money when I got to US was music. It was the only thing I know how to do. In fact, I was in Oregon, in Portland, because that's where I arrived. And there was one Iranian newsletter that I opened, and I saw an ad in there looking for a Persian singer in a restaurant in LA. So I called them, and the gentleman said, "Go ahead and sing." So I sang over the phone. Said, "Well,
this is like the 80s or something.
1986.
Was it that famous restaurant that everybody sings at in LA?
It no longer exists.
Okay.
It was called Persepolis.
Persepolis. Okay. Yeah.
And anyway, he said, "Well, we can't hire you over the phone. This is 1986 we're talking. If you want, you should come here." And that was enough incentive.
By the way, you didn't speak English that well.
Not well.
So you're calling the guy talking to in
Farsi.
Persian.
Absolutely.
Thinking, thanks God I could get a gig.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I got into a plane and went to LA, and from the airport with my suitcases went to the audition, if you will.
Right. You funded your own attempt to sing at a restaurant. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he hired me.
All right.
And I got my first gig. So that's really
To do cover songs or something?
to do
or-
cover songs.
Because you end up, I remember you telling me once you end up opening for Vegan, right?
There was a period of time that I worked in a place called Cabaret Lido.
Okay.
And I was working with Farrukh Zad, who was the MC of the night, all night. What an experience that was, by the way.
Feridun Farrokh?
Feridun Farrokh.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he was the showman. He would, come and talk between performers and sing himself, and and then I was the very, very first act of the evening. And on weekends, Mr. Vegan was the finishing act. So that's really, I need to put it in perspective.
Right.
It's not like I was pals with
Right.
Vegan or anything.
While we're at it, how was Feridun Farrokh Zad to deal
Oh,
with?
amazing.
Nice guy.
Super nice guy. Super nice guy, especially. So I was early
Supportive
20s.
of a young
That's what I was going to
talent?
say,
Yeah, yeah.
especially to young, talented artists. Especially someone like me who just came from Iran.
Wow.
Especially, yeah, very, very supportive. Lots of lessons. Yeah.
So the original question was, how the hell does that guy, the kid who's
Right.
singing at the restaurant
Right.
with Feridun Farrokh
Goes
Zad
into
and-
medicine.
Well, yeah. Where does the I mean,
Right.
Well, actually, the question was, are you surprised? You said you're not surprised. Why are you not surprised?
Because after doing the music scene in LA for 4 or 5 years as my primary source of income, I ended up doing a lot of social events in people's homes. That was the source of income.
House concerts.
Weddings.
You sing in someone's house.
Right. Bar mitzvahs. Could be a hall or a hotel, but it was private parties, private events.
What kind of stuff are you singing at these things?
You name it,
Give it.
Shahram, Shapare, all the Shisha Hash, dance tunes. 2 Series Ebby or Daryush.
You have a band, or you have like a DJ with
I
you?
put together a band,
Okay.
Towards the end of my career, we had a very nice band, actually. And we were getting paid really well, for a young guy who was technically illegal at the time. One of the restaurants I was singing in applied for my green card, actually, as a singer. Anyway, but I grew to be more unhappy myself because I was treated like music equipment. I had to sing certain songs at a certain time, at a certain level of volume, in
a certain way to mimic the singers.
And negotiate for money and there's nothing wrong with any of that.
Right.
It was not really why I...
So like any Persian businessman who wants to make a lot of money, you went into Chinese medicine.
No, you're getting ahead of my story.
Right.
So I started having insomnia. I was not able to sleep, and I was dating a girl at the time who, she was an American lady, young lady, and she booked an appointment with her acupuncturist for me, which was in Chinatown, a Chinese gentleman. And I got my first treatment, and it really changed my life.
Wow.
It changed my life, yeah.
Wow.
Because...
But, sorry to interrupt you, but you had a predilection for all things Eastern to a certain extent.
Correct.
Because I know that when you were a kid in Iran, where were you in Iran?
Tehran.
Even though you're Shirazi,
My father is
right.
from Shiraz.
You're in Tehran, but you were actually you were doing martial arts, and you were into sort of Eastern Asian culture
and transcendental meditation.
And transcendental. First of all, who's doing that in Iran in the 1970s?
I know.
That's
it was
as a kid,
early
right?
80s. It was 80, 81, 82. That
amidst the Islamic Revolution, you are doing TM. Yeah, that's pretty
I started
amazing.
doing martial arts before the revolution when I was 12 or 13, and continued with it. Karate, Japanese style.
And what was that about? You just like Bruce Lee, or what were you?
Bruce Lee was a major influence, but no, I had a cousin who was a good influence on me, who was about 7 or 8 years older than me, and he sponsored me basically to go with him, and he cared for me, and really showed me the ropes. And I loved it. I really loved the philosophy, the discipline. It made a big impact on
So
me.
fast forward to the girlfriend takes you to the acupuncturist. This is something you have a predisposition towards liking, and it works for you.
You can say that. And not only that medicine, the predisposition of looking for answers within rather than outside of myself. Looking to, and I felt like acupuncture was a tool that enabled me to tap into those resources because it immediately calmed me down. It made me very grounded and centered, not just during the treatment, but even afterwards.
So as a segue into the title of this episode, in fact, we talk about wellness-based medicine. Let's just get our terms correct. Or defined, what do we mean by that?
So the traditional, what we call Western medicine, is what I like to call illness-based medicine. And I'm not using it as a negative term. It's just what it is. Right. You have an illness, and you go find a treatment for your illness.
Right.
Although that medicine is changing too. They're now talking more and more about prevention. But 20, 30 years ago, nothing.
Let alone 50, 60 years ago. You got a problem, you go to the doctor, otherwise you don't see the doctor.
Or even they make fun out of you if you would think, they looked at people as weirdos if they ate well. I remember even when I was
really
in LA, like the guy who was a vegetarian or didn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's a hippie.
I was a vegetarian and for a few years in the 90s I had a girlfriend who was a vegetarian and we broke up, but I kept the vegetarianism up until the mid 2000s kind of thing, or the first decade of 2000s. And my sister went to Iran and she was explaining to my family in Iran, Jian doesn't eat meat, and they were saying like they thought I had some illness, like of course I know it's a big thing now, but even 20 years ago, right?
So you know what I'm talking about.
I do. I hear you.
So the medicine that I like to promote and practice, I like to call it wellness-based medicine, because the foundation of medicine is on wellness, is on prevention. You rather take better care of yourself before things happen to you.
You said that you didn't mean the term illness-based medicine in a derogatory way. Correct. Or pejorative. But do you believe that the current state of traditional Western medicine is deficient?
Like anything else, it's deficient in some areas and really excels in some other areas. And same as wellness-based medicine. I mean, I have a doctor, I have an MD that I go to myself, and I have a naturopath that I consult with, and I have an acupuncturist. I am fortunate enough to be able to access all of them, and then I choose what course of treatment. Western medicine is fantastic in diagnostic tools because of tools they have at their disposal, MRI machines, and so you're a fool if you don't take advantage of that. If I'm diagnosed with, if I'm in a car accident, of course I want to be in a ER or OR, not an acupuncturist try to fix my broken leg. So everything has its own place. That's why I said I don't want to use it as a negative term when I say illness, but it's the nature of the medicine.
But if I'm suffering from headaches, how do I know if I'm if I should go to my MD or my naturopathic doctor?
Good question. So there are categories of conditions that are called chronic and acute. Most people know what that means. Chronic condition is something that you've been suffering from for weeks or months or years.
Don't assume most people know it.
Okay.
Just explain everything.
All right. So
I don't understand half
so
of it.
acute condition is something that just happens to you.
Okay.
You wake up with a headache. Yeah. That's an acute headache, right? But if you have been dealing with this headache for a year, that becomes a chronic headache. So that's the difference. And most acute conditions, if they are really, like if you have a headache that is really pounding and bothering you, maybe you should go to ER. Maybe you are having a brain aneurysm, and they will be able to discover that. Most of the time, that's not the case, but they are able to rule it out.
Okay.
So for acute problems, or if you have a cut or major stuff, definitely Western medicine first. Afterwards, you can see an acupuncturist to treat the side effects of the stuff that they have done to you. But for chronic conditions, the difference between a natural or naturopathic approach is we always look for the root cause of the problem. Right. Our investigation is different than Western med. We don't look at your headache only at your head to treat your headache. We look at your liver, your kidneys, you know what I mean? So the approach is more holistic, it's more systematic. Yeah. So it takes a little longer to figure out what's going on. But for chronic problems, I would go to a naturopathically minded provider first. And by the way, there are MDs now who do practice holistic medicine.
But there is also a lot of MDs or people in traditional medicine that won't necessarily recommend an acupuncturist. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. I mean, I think my own MD is open to this kind of thing, but they don't always. And of course, the newer criticism of traditional medicine is that they're in bed with the pharmaceutical companies. And that,
which is
so
true.
if you have a problem, they're going to prescribe a pill to take, and that wellness-based medicine isn't necessarily going to. I mean, maybe wellness-based medicine is in bed with a different kind of pharmacy. I don't know, but explain that dichotomy of, again, whether going to a doctor who's going to prescribe you something. I mean, I don't feel qualified to say to my doctor, my throat hurts. No, don't prescribe the antibiotics. Maybe I need to see an acupuncturist instead.
Right.
But maybe that's what I should be saying. I don't know.
Well, no, this is a complicated question.
Okay.
Let's simplify it, right? We're all humans. MDs, NDs, acupuncturists, doesn't matter who you see. And they're corrupt humans in all professions, right? So, but generally speaking, what divides in my mind is how I do my research as a patient. And these days, that's fantastic because people are empowered. With the initiative is important. You as a patient really need to be in charge of your health. You should never say, "Fix me, doctor," whatever the problem is. You should be involved in whoever is doing whatever to you, to understand it at least. Not if it's an open heart surgery, of course, but at least know why they're doing the open heart surgery. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the patient actually is the key in here. You have to be more educated and not blindly follow any. But one thing I have to say about natural medicine in general, the consequences of the therapies that you receive from a natural doctor usually are far less than the consequences of the therapies you get from a Western doctor.
What do you mean by consequences?
Side effects. After effects. Like if you get a surgery, for example, all surgeons tell you, no problem. We'll open you, fix the problem, you'll be fine. Because that's what they do. That's what they're great at.
Right.
But they don't tell you that, hey, you're not going to be able to use your arm for 6 weeks after that.
Right.
You know what I mean? They may tell you, but they don't really sit down and make sure you understand. And that could be detrimental to some people. It could turn into depression.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are a lot of consequences, or even pills. Even a lot of the pills that are prescribed on a daily basis. Don't get me wrong. If you have high blood pressure, for example, you should be taking medicine for it, because you may have a stroke if you don't.
But they're higher impact. I mean, they're faster cures, right? I mean, the traditional medicine, like going to one of your nutritional consultants, I'm assuming is not going to change my life overnight in terms of that's going to be a process, right?
Exactly, yeah. The major difference is the level of commitment as a patient, and if you can really hang in there for a while. Because change happens slowly when it's happening organically, but it's more permanent.
You tend to write this. I don't know if it's a column or it's a newsletter or something that for To Be Well that you write. That I really enjoy some of your pieces. There was one that really resonated, and it was called "The Synergistic Effects of Wellness." I want you to explain it, but it immediately made sense to me because I noticed that. When I am, there's a domino effect that when if I am going to the gym every day, I'm in a period like right now where I'm going to the gym, I for some reason feel like eating better. When I'm getting up early, I feel like going to the gym, when I'm, it all kind of plays into each other. And you make the case in your piece that there's some science to this, or that it actually follows that if you do one thing, it's going to talk to me about the synergistic effects of wellness.
You actually explained it pretty much. It's what it is. You're incentivized to do the right thing when you do the right thing. So when you wake up early and go for a run, that's like you made a deposit into your wellness bank, right? And if you go have a huge pancake with bunch of syrup and juice and all that stuff, you took a huge withdrawal, and there's a deficit in your wellness. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But if you
but why do you feel, if you get up early and go for the run, why do you feel less, at least in my experience, less like eating that pancake?
That's what I'm talking about.
More like eating an apple or something.
Because you already have that incentivization in your mind that sets the tone for the next, hey, I have done this. So, and don't get me wrong, exercise is proven now. Research has proven it's actually more effective than most antidepressants that are prescribed, as long as you do it regularly. If you do it 5-6 times a week, it could be more powerful. So if you go for a quick burst of run or exercise or bicycle, whatever, if you get your heart rate up and break a sweat a little bit, that change your chemistry as well, change your brain's chemistry, change everything about you. So it's easy, you're in a better mood. You know what I mean? You are more likely to hang in there for a couple more hours without a meal because you're in a better mood, And a lot of times we eat actually not because we're hungry, because of other reasons. So, I mean, I'm not an expert in that. It's a whole different topic.
Okay, so another thing that you've written about, and you said it earlier, you believe that success, I'm quoting you, success stems from within, that we all have the power to create our own reality. Can I gently call bullshit on that?
Challenge me.
Well, it just sounds so
cliche, right?
Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, like as long as find it from inside. Like I get the idea, but what do you mean? I mean, what do you really? Success stems from within. It sounds like something that you buy, from like IKEA to put on your wall or something.
Yeah. No, I get it and I understand it. So I have to give you a little bit of background about this. What we're talking about. I have an aunt who's a psychologist. She lives in Germany. She's older than me and a great influence. And we had long conversations about this, that, of course, if you are doing good, if you're successful, you want to take all the credit. It's human nature. You want to say, I did it all.
Yes.
But if you're down, you blame the world for your, So a part of it, I'm not ignoring that. But the reason I made that statement is because of my life, is because of what has happened to me and the way that I became instrumental in changing my life several times, not just one time. And it goes back to when I was in Iran and when I was a teenager, post-revolution. I went through a dark period. In fact, one of the reasons that I was introduced to meditation was because I was very depressed. I was becoming, it's like, what is the point in everything? People are dying in war, and my friends were, And meditation became a gateway for me to search for a lot of answers within, instead of relying on outside resources. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Search for answers within.
Right.
I'm not making fun of. I mean,
No.
I'm sure I do versions of this. I try to do versions of this. But what does that mean?
So when you meditate,
give me an example of what of an answer that you found within.
So we, especially nowadays, we are constantly analyzing our mind. Our brain is constantly bombarded and with information, especially with smartphones, and and we are. The brain's job is to process, right?
Yes.
Receive and process, right? So we are now constantly bombarded with information to process and analyze. And when you meditate, doesn't matter how you meditate, doesn't matter. Whatever you do, whatever works for you. Even a yoga session could be, marathon running could be meditation. The point of it is you stop that internal conversation that is constantly happening. And the moment you do that, or if you go for a walk in the nature, the connection with the nature, you immediately feel, I know it's cliche again, but more grounded, calmer.
Okay.
As soon as that chatter is reduced or gone, I believe that is a part of you that you need to be a lot more in touch with and connected to on a daily basis. And when you do that, the more you do that, the more you empower that, because it is you separate from the world. You know, it is this. It is in the meditation in Zen Buddhism. There is a concept they call it silent witness. Is this entity, this person who was born the moment you were born? It's the way they describe it, right? And it's always witnessing every experience you go through in life without judging, just witnessing it, completely no judgment, no matter what you do, but it's witnessing it. And that's the part of you that you tap into. And then everything becomes a little different for you. Life, you feel more empowered in terms of your destiny, and you know, and we cannot minimize the power of our intention. You know, you remember Stephen Covey, right? The guy who wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah. He had a very important segment of one of his books talking about the power of intention.
Yes, absolutely.
What in our culture, ما فارسی میگیم نیت. نیت تو صاف کن. So when you put your intention, you focus your intention on something, whatever you want to achieve, and of course, if it's something that is parallel with your capabilities, then you can achieve it. It becomes easier to achieve because you're driven. You wake up every day, you have a goal. And when you are more in touch with your internal resources, when I say resources, I mean, you know, your power. And everybody has it. We all have it. You know, it's just some of us are more inclined to use it, utilize it, some of us. And unfortunately, the younger generation are more and more getting away from it because of electronics and distraction.
Can I tell you something I've been doing that maybe people who are listening would relate to on some level? I don't know. And ask you whether this is a version of turning within.
Please.
You know? I've been trying in recent times, I'd say in recent years, but even very specifically, very recently, to ask my question, what do I really want? What do I really want? Because there are so many, there's so much noise around us these days.
Absolutely.
Telling us what we want.
Absolutely.
And there's so many ways in which we are supposed to assess what we want. If we post something in social media and it gets a lot of clicks, that must be something we want, right? Or if we do something that makes us a lot of money, that should be something we want. But if you actually ask the question, what do I want? I mean, we were talking about me shaving my face, you know, and and there's been I've everyone, of course, especially Persians, you know, which is the community I'm mostly in these days. You know, everyone has their opinion. You know, nobody's going to shy. Don't find me an Iranian who's not going to give an opinion on my. And so I've got this diversity of opinions. So I've had to, you know. Figure I'm going to have to decide myself whether I want to stay clean. It sounds silly, right? It sounds silly, but these questions around get a little more complicated when people say, "Well, you look younger," you know. So that's been the one big theme of me shaving my face. You know? Oh, you look younger, which most people think or believe that's a compliment. That's what we want. But do I want to look younger? Is that what I'm aspiring to? So is asking that question a version of what you're talking about?
Very much so. And to expand on it a little bit, actually, you know, it goes back to what we were just talking about. When you are more grounded, when you come from a calmer place within you, right? Those questions get a much more profound answers.
More decisive.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you're not doing it for anyone else.
Yes.
If you're doing it for Jian, because Jian knows what to do.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it could be a foolish thing. It could be, I'm not saying that you know everything.
Yes.
But I'm saying at least you're much more in peace with the decisions you make and actually take responsibility for the consequences of your decisions.
Yes.
Because you made them.
Yes.
Right? So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about your internal resources, your internal power, you know.
What are you talking about when you talk about reactions? You've talked about
Right.
how our reactions define our destiny.
Right.
What does it mean?
Because our reactions are the only thing we have control over. So if right now, if you get up and hit me in the face, like,
Which is imminent.
you know, the only control I have over the situation is the way I react to it. Right. So that was an extreme. But
Yes.
in conversation,
If I trash talk you.
in a relationship,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
and the way I react to it defines who I am. That's how I look at it. I remember years ago, I had a friend.
But doesn't what the other person is doing define what they're...
Yeah, of course.
I see.
But you should not be concerned with how they're defining themselves. You
You're
should be
concerned with your reaction.
And I'm not talking about image. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about the way you make peace with your own actions.
Somebody pushes ahead of you in the line at Starbucks.
Exactly. Or traffic.
Okay.
Road rage
Oof.
is a perfect example.
Yeah, I'm bad with that. Yeah.
So I really, really try to, and my wife is fantastic in reminding me of it. You know, I really, really try to look at that person as someone who had a really bad day. Who knows what has happened to them? Who knows what is the reason behind
they're
their
driving
crazy-
extremely slowly.
Instead of making it about me, making it about how can you cut me off? I was in the right. I just immediately try to say, oh, what has happened
That
to you?
feels very in the moment. How is that shaping your destiny?
Because your destiny is shaped by moments. I'm serious.
How dare you turn that around on me so quickly?
Remember the last piece that I wrote? I don't know if you read it or not, but the last, and
The
these
one
are
about
for our
love?
newsletter. No, the one after that.
Okay.
The one after that. It says, "Get away from yourself. Get out of your own way."
Yes,
get out of your own way.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Right. And in that piece, I talk about an experience in San Diego. There was a lady who taught Zen Buddhism, and she took a group, and I wasn't present in that group, but I heard about the experience. I read about it. This group went and watched a beautiful sunset in La Jolla. You've been to La Jolla,
Yeah.
like one of the best places on
Yeah.
earth to watch a
Yeah.
sunset, right? And their job was to watch the sunset while they're meditating to the sunset. And one of them said something like, "What a beautiful, oh my God," or "This is fantastic," whatever. After the experience, the lady who was running the workshop told the person, the moment you open your mouth to describe your experience, you removed yourself from that experience because you were not present anymore. Because you were analyzing it, you were judging it, you know what I mean? You were trying to describe it. You're trying to impress other people.
Let
with your
alone trying to take an Instagram
Exactly.
photo for yeah.
So now talk about social media.
Right.
Social media is exactly what we were talking about in terms of you live for others.
Yeah.
You are completely removed.
I mean, fuck, people go to Machu Picchu now to take their Instagram photo.
Right.
Not because they want the experience, but to get the photo, right?
Right.
We're some work to do in that regard.
Kinda. We have made a lot of advances as species. I mean, humans. Let's talk about all the advances that we have made. But in terms of, depth of our experience as a human on this planet, which is unbelievable. I mean, what are the chances?
Yeah.
We just being born is like winning the most awesome lottery, and we are removing ourselves from that more and more and more, and live for others and the image that we have, which is funny because in our culture in Iran there is a phrase we called it aberu, And I
We don't
feel
really have a we've talked about this before. Aberu doesn't have a direct translation.
right.
Shaming, status, reputation, yeah.
But you're right, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I feel like social media is now turning
It's all that. It's all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For everyone. So that part of Iranian culture now is global.
It feels like when you talk about the wellness-based medicine, it's really important. You seem to emphasize this community element of
Right.
of wellness caretakers or whatever, however you want to call it. Like your To Be Well clinics, they're bringing together these different healers into one community. So you've got acupuncturists and
Right.
massage therapists and nutritional consultants and naturopathic medicine and neurofeedback, which seems very well intentioned and beautiful to the mission you've been talking about. It's also for profit, right?
It is.
You're not
Right.
doing this just out of the
Right.
goodness of your heart. You're not donating these clinics. You make
No.
money.
No,
How
we
do you
do.
navigate? I mean, a dentist will
Right.
say, like, yeah, I'll fix your teeth, but basically I enjoy that I'm making a lot of money too.
Right.
How do you navigate when you have such a virtuous, seemingly, mission, the fact that you're
Right.
doing this to make a shitload of money too?
It goes back to the intention that we talked about. The intention of creating To Be Well was not to enrich myself with money. That is a byproduct of that intention. When I first opened the first wellness center, I bought a house in a neighborhood that didn't have a wellness center. We tapped into our resources. We maxed out our credit cards. We renovated it. I painted with my own hands. Anyway, so the reason I did all of that is because my vision was to serve that community with what they really needed. They needed the resources that we had to provide. But I knew if I do that right, it will be profitable.
Okay.
So if that makes sense. And then the other thing that I should say is that after 10 years that we did that, and it was very profitable, it was very successful. The second branch of To Be Well that we opened, we had a community clinic in our first floor of we bought a building in downtown Portland and turned it into a clinic. And I tried to do what it was called social enterprise. So we had a not a nonprofit, but a free clinic that we funded. Providers volunteered their times, and we got supplements from supplement companies. So anyway, that was another way for us to give back to the community. And when I use the term community, I'm not just talking about the community within To Be Well, but I'm also talking about the impact that To Be Well has.
Sure.
On the community
Sure.
of Portland, the city that the clinics are in.
I mean, naturopathic doctors these days, especially in America, make a lot of money.
Right.
A lot of money. And
Because
and,
they're
and good
helping
for them. Good for
they're
them.
helping a lot of people.
But
Right?
there is something. Is it silly that I feel
course.
like there's some contradiction on some
Right.
level between what the holistic approach, et cetera, and capitalism? It just feels like it's at odds
Right.
somehow. I don't want to begrudge anybody making a lot of money. Good for
Right.
them, right? But
Right.
but there's something about it that feels like, how do you navigate that?
So let me turn this back on you. There are
Sure.
a lot of podcasts right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are making a lot of money.
Not this one.
Well,
That's how I navigate
but
it, by not making a lot of money.
But honestly,
Yes.
was money your first
No.
motivator? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Passion.
I mean,
love. You wanted
I'm
to
not
make
gonna
money.
complain if
This
we
is
make a lot of money, yeah.
For profit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Obviously, I'm not a spokesperson for all naturopaths in the U.S. There are crooks everywhere. But even if the money is your intention,
I like how
great.
that's your answer to everything. Oh, there's crooks everywhere. I mean,
Well, that's true though, isn't
all
it?
right. Trudeau.
Because-
What?
Because we're all human.
Yeah.
Ultimately, humans are, flawed.
Yes.
We all are.
Yes. Yes, I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, but I don't know if you answer your question.
Well, not really.
It's okay. So
My question is,
How can you navigate-
on what happens?
Right.
Did you ever look at your pricing and go, should we lower this a little bit or increase? I mean, based
Well,
on
actually,
our
if you-
mission. I mean, you
Sure,
just
sure, sure,
described
sure,
the.
sure.
I mean, I know it's a stereotype, but that we don't wear makeup and we believe in we're hippies and all of that.
Right. Not me though.
That's right. The guy running the place is like $1,000 an hour.
No.
Yeah.
In terms of, first of all, if you go to our website, on the website it says we do not turn anyone away because of money.
Okay.
So if somebody
that's the answer.
if somebody comes to any of our clinics and tell us, I need your service, I need your help, I can't afford it, then we enter a contract with them. Enter into a contract with them.
That they have to work.
They need to
3
tell
days
us,
a week.
No.
Cleaning the
They
bathrooms.
just have to give us a reason, and we don't check it. They just have to tell us why they can't pay, and then for
I'll be there.
a year,
I'll be there next week.
Yeah, I mean, we're not stupid either. If someone drives with a Mercedes and says, you know what I mean? Yeah. We know the type. We've been doing this for long.
Sure.
But anyway, honestly,
I appreciate that you do that.
Yeah. We don't turn people away if they can't pay for it.
All right.
And that's, again, back to motivation. One of the reasons that I left music in LA, actually, it kind of dovetails to that, was money. Because I was actually making quite a bit of cash under the table, for a 24-5-year-old kid, 23-4-year-old kid, which was great. But I felt that I was selling myself. I felt that was the trade-off. The trade-off was that I was prostituting my art, if you want to call it. Even what I was doing, honestly, I don't even call it art in LA. I have to be honest about it. I actually have an album that was published in 1988, 89, actually, by Parse Video. Yeah.
Okay.
It's my first album in LA. And remember, cassette tapes had side A and side B.
I remember, yes.
So side A of that work is all really beautiful, deep, melodic, beautiful arrangements. But side B is really trash. It was just what LA needed at the time. 6/8 and dance tunes.
Right.
So, and that's why I left the music.
You don't want to only be governed by the profit motive.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the point. And the reason I went back to music was our dear friend Babak Amini.
Let me get to that.
Okay.
I'm going to get to the music before we end off.
All right.
But one more question, actually. Now that we're talking about Iranians and doctors, I want to ask a few people this. So don't worry if you don't have the definitive answer, but because it's something that I've noticed recently. Some of the folks here, for example, on our Rook team, are people who've come from Iran within the last 10 years. So their practices, their cultural practices around doctors and medicine and dealing with illness are based out of Iran, as opposed to me growing up here in the West, or particularly here in Canada, right? Here in Canada, where we have universal health care, for better or for worse, I've always been a proponent. There are people who will make the case that you get faster service or better service or whatever with a private healthcare. So one of the sort of subtle expectations of like the unwritten contract between the healthcare service here and the population is, if you're feeling a little sick, you don't immediately go to the doctor. You monitor it for a couple of days. If after a week you've still got a sniffle or a sore throat or whatever it is, I'm not talking about serious injuries or something. I'm talking about a sick. Then you go to the doctor, right? Okay. And then, in fact, the doctor may say, come back in another week. Let's see how this progresses. Right. I think that's based in some sort of honor system of not taxing the system, which is universally provided by the taxpayers, by just going anytime you feel like you've got, an earache or a sniffle or whatever it is. I find with Iranians, particularly those either in Iran or who've just come here, within an hour of somebody saying, I'm feeling a little under the weather, you should go see a doctor. Like there's this immediate expectation that day right away you should go to the doctor, which almost feels in the Canadian context irresponsible. What do you mean? Go to a doctor? Why don't you actually see if you're going to be sick in a couple of days? Are you familiar with that? Can you explain that?
I think so. I obviously I'm not familiar with Canadian health care because I don't live here, but I think I know what you're talking about. And in terms, so
it's more the Iranian thing I'm talking about. Yeah.
I'm going to try to come up with an explanation
Okay.
for it. And this is just what
All
I'm
right.
thinking right
Yes.
now. I think Western medicine, when I was a kid in Iran, or even before me, when my mom was a kid maybe, became like this miraculous medicine that really cured a lot of illnesses. And because we are still a third world country, we dealt with a lot of infections and stuff that killed people every year.
Right.
And Western medicine all of a sudden came and cured a lot of illnesses, helped a lot of people,
Yes.
extend people's lives. So we had this kind of romantic relationship with doctors as these superheroes who can't fix anything. And if there's anything wrong with us, we should trust our will.
Right.
So I think that has something to do with it. Maybe that's still going on in Iran. Maybe people still have that kind of relationship. But what I'm talking about is patients, like your criticism I like, because I think as patients, we have to take more responsibility about our health.
Yeah.
And we have to be more in tuned with our bodies.
Yeah.
That it goes back again with these practices of meditation or self, whatever they are. Cultivating awareness, let's call it, right? These practices enable you not to freak out when you have a sore throat. To say, oh, okay, I had sore throats before. I'm going to do this remedy or do that or whatever for 2-3 days. And if it still there and if it's getting worse, then I'll go see someone. So that's the point of trusting your own healing powers.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to ask about it is because it dovetails exactly with responsibility and also prevention, right? Because if your answer to anything that's wrong is, well, I'll just go to the doctor and the doctor's going to cure it, then there's no sense of responsibility ever, right? Because even if I'm not feeling well, I don't need to do anything about it. I'll just go to the doctor. Doctor will fix it for me or give me something immediately.
Exactly. And not only that, the doctor, especially in this country, from what I hear, are overextended.
In Canada.
Are busy, right?
Yeah, that's a problem.
So they don't take you as serious as you think they would, because it's a job for them, and they have 50 other people, 150 other people.
They've got somebody whose ear is dangling off their head that needs surgery,
or
and
whatever,
you're coming in with a sore
much more serious stuff, right?
Right.
So they will just prescribe something to you. And again, even Western doctors, when they give you something, what do they say? They say, try this for a while and see what happens. You know why they say that? Because they rely on your body's ability to deal with that thing and fix it. So ultimately, your body is curing itself, whether it's with a pill or with whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Your body is the true doctor. It's just how you stimulate that energy, that healing.
You mentioned something at the beginning of the interview that I want to come back to, that is an interesting thing you said, and I want to ask you about it. You came to America as an Iranian immigrant. We talked about you could barely speak English when you came here. You said you had to reinvent yourself several times. What are you most proud of in some of your reinventions to date?
To be well is definitely one. Starting that community. My music with our friend Babak is another reinvention. Before that, I went into consulting too, and I wrote this book that really helped me expand my message, not just to my patients, but to greater. Yeah, I mean, you can actually reinvent yourself every month if something interests you, if something triggers you. See, the point is, I always wanted to live a life worth living. In order to do that...
Does somebody not want to live a life worth living?
Oh my God. You have no idea how many patients come to our clinics every day that we have to convince them not to kill themselves.
Oh, right.
I mean, not every day, but every week.
Yeah.
Iranians exaggerate, right? But seriously, I mean, especially nowadays, since COVID, anxiety, depression, I mean, it's a real problem, especially for younger demographic. So no, I mean, I always wanted to take the most advantage. And one other thing I should mention about me, my personal experience is I got physically ill when I was a child, few times, serious illnesses, meningitis, which is in Iran very rare, but I got it. I got a heart condition, when I was a kid, and so on and so forth. And very early on, I started this relationship with life as precious, as this gift that was given to me that I really, really need to utilize it well and enjoy it and expand upon that. So that has been my mode of operandum. Some of it is genetics, and I'm not saying all my days are great. Don't get me wrong.
No, but that's a beautiful that you recognize that and you embrace that.
Exactly.
The gift of life for however long you have it.
Right. And the other reason that I do things is because now, and for the last 10 years of my life, I've been doing them more and more for me first, and then for others, or the impact that it could have on them. If I enjoy it, if I like it, if it gives me satisfaction and I'm passionate about it. Again, the music is another example.
So before we end off, let's come to the music, because it's interesting. This is something that you were doing as a young man,
Right.
and for most folks, that's usually, it stays there, in their past, at least those who've moved on from the arts in that sense. And
Right.
you express your creativity in other ways, as a wellness person, et cetera, as a Chinese Asian medicine practitioner, et cetera. And if you are to practice music, you do it, in some dad band, in a garage, kicking out the old tunes. You came back to music in sort of a big way. You're creating songs with Babak Amini and putting out records. What was you said a moment ago, Babak brought you back to it. What was the defining moment to? It's not really reinventing yourself, because you're going back. You're reinventing.
You could say that.
But I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago that you decided to come back to music,
It was
right?
2017.
Okay.
When I first met Babak, and he said something to me that resonated at that time. We talked, and at the beginning it was not like, hey, I want to do music. Can you help me? No, we became friends, honestly, first. And then, I told him that, I'm contemplating with this idea. I'm thinking about it. What are your thoughts? And he said, the only thing I can tell you is that...
Contemplating the idea of making
exactly.
music. Why were you contemplating it?
Because it was something that I parked, but never really completely give it away.
Yeah.
I was singing in those bands that you were talking about, at events, gatherings with friends. And the other thing is, it's a fantastic therapy for me when I sing. It's such a good feeling. It's really expressing my feelings in a way that I cannot do any other way.
Yeah.
And I write and do a lot. But music, you're a musician, of course, of all people. It's different.
Yeah.
Energy travels with sound waves, so.
Yes.
And he said, a lot of people can open clinics, can write books, can do a lot of things that you've done, but your voice was born with you and is going to die with you. And it's one of the only unique things about you. And if you have this gift, why not explore it? And it was so true. And I'm not saying I have a beautiful voice, but it's something that ever since I was a kid, everybody was telling me, read this poem for me. Or
your speaking voice is beautiful.
So it was a gift that I was born with, right? And why not explore it? Yeah. Why not do more with it?
And you're partly here in Toronto because you're actually working on a new project with him.
I am.
What, can you tell us anything about it?
Well, I came first to be at Babak's concert that we were, and by the way, kudos to you. I told you that night, you did a fantastic introduction.
Thank you.
I really mean it, because you really went to all the points that we don't do in our culture.
Yes.
So I thank you for that.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and then it was a beautiful night, and then I am staying until the end of this week. Yeah, we are working on few songs, a new project, and it's actually kind of turning into an album. So, but we're gonna do single releases soon. 2 of them are now off the ground, and 2 more we're talking about.
It's really nice to have you here, man.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Of course, thanks for having
me. I've learned
me.
from it.
Yeah.
Destiny is a series of moments.
Exactly.
Right?
It's not. Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to go out and try and reinvent myself later
You
today.
have done it
I
a
have.
few times.
I have.
Of course you have.
I've had a few different careers. I mean, I was a musician, and then I was a media guy, and then I
Perfect
was
example.
a writer, and then
Perfect example.
Yeah. Well, I actually, I think that they used to bring me out. This is like 10, 15 years ago. I was the young face of broadcasting. I wasn't that young, but they would bring me out to these university and college students, to give them advice on their future. And there would always be some, and this is like 2007 or something, right? It's like a new 21st century, because I think everything changed in the last 20 years. Everything's changed. The internet and the world has really changed. And there would always be some 18-year-old freaking out, coming to me afterwards in tears going, I like a first year student, like at a university saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to be. I don't know what my future, I don't have a plan. I don't have and my line, which I embrace even more so now, is if there was ever a time when you would have a linear career from when you're like 20 years old to when you're 80, 200 years ago, or even 50 years ago, 60 years ago, it doesn't exist. It may exist in some particular kind of profession, like maybe a farmer or maybe a dentist, possibly. But for the most part, all of us are going to have, and I would say this to university students, all of you are going to have 6 to 8 different careers, not just versions of a career, but careers in the next 60 years, because we don't even know what Twitter is going to look like 6 months from now.
Exactly.
How do we know what the job requirements are going to be? How do we know who you are going to need to be in 20 years, right?
Correct.
So that notion of reinvention is actually kind of baked in now. Everyone's scrambling. We live in an era where everyone's their own brand. And if you can hold on to one job or career for 10, 20 years, that's a miracle, let alone because everything, what exists today as business and skill set is completely different from 20 years ago.
Very true. And the other beauty of it is that you are not attached to one thing. And one thing is not provide you your sense of identity. Your identity is deep within you. Whatever you do, however you reinvent yourself, so it's these
except
days.
For acupuncturists. No, really. You could do that for 100 years.
You can do
Couldn't
that.
you?
Yeah.
And there'll always be people interested in it.
Right. In fact, that is
See,
becoming
you
more
broke
and
the
more
code.
relevant.
You broke the 21st century code. You figured out the job.
No, one thing I want to say, though, it's these days about politics. I know we may be running out of time, but politics and people's ideas about politics in U.S. actually is like that. Everybody's at each other's throat and so passionate.
Yeah.
And they forget that your idea should not define you as a person. It's just your idea. You should not attach your whole identity to that idea, even if it's a fantastic idea. It's the correct idea. It's an idea. And you should have a self-identity outside of it. You know what I mean? So activism is now becoming very popular in the U.S. No matter right, left, doesn't matter.
Yes.
And because people have, this is my own theory, people are becoming emptier and emptier within. They have such a in Farsi
void.
Khala, void. That Khala means void, actually, which is an Arabic word, actually. It's not Farsi.
It sounds like an Arabic word.
That we need to
I got a little
fill.
khala caught in my throat earlier when I had some.
That's different. So anyway, people will try to fill it with these identities that are tribal based, and it's so easy to not,
sure. That's not new. That's not
social
new.
media is making it incredibly popular and crazy. So,
but I mean, that's the people who stormed the U.S. embassy in 1980 in Iran saw their identity as Iranian students fighting for Islam or something. I don't know,
Right.
Everybody there's always been that tribal kind of mentality when it comes to politics.
And some of them admit that they were wrong.
Yes.
And some of them to this day say, no, I wasn't. So that's
what
I'm talking about.
A lot of them admit they were wrong at this point. Yeah. Before I let you go, you proposed to me, you said something about the possibility of leading us through something called a guided visualization meditation,
Right.
which you can do with people just listening
Sure.
on their headphones to this podcast or something.
Yes.
Or watching it on YouTube.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
How long will this take?
2 or 3 minutes.
All right.
Yeah. We'll make it short.
Take it away.
Yeah. So I have to do it in English, so apologies for that. But what I like you to do is to, if you can,
You're talking with the audience now.
the
You're talking
audience.
to the audience. All right.
What I like you to do is to close your eyes, if you can. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes. But find a quiet corner, a calm and quiet place, and close your eyes. And the first thing I like you to do is to start visualizing the breath that you take in. Every time you breathe, I want you to visualize that a wave of energy enters your body through your nose and your mouth. And the way that I like to describe this wave is the way that steam that is escaping a boiling teapot is traveling in space. So something with a little bit of texture. Visualize that, enters your body, and travels down from your head all the way to your lower abdominal area. Doesn't matter exactly where. Just the general area in your lower abdomen. I want you to visualize this wave of energy gets deposited into that general area in your lower abdomen. So every time you breathe, with every breath you take, I want you to visualize you're making a small deposit of energy within your body. When you think about that area in your lower abdomen, I want you to think about it as a center of gravity, as something that connects you to this planet, to this earth. In fact, electromagnetically might be. And I want you to visualize yourself very calm, quiet, and grounded with every breath you take. Now, another component of this exercise is we are now going to use your breath to empty your mind. Visualize all your thoughts bouncing around your head. Doesn't matter what the origin of the thought is. They could be memories of the past, worries about the future, good, bad, doesn't matter. Visualize them with letters, with words, with pictures, images, colors, bouncing all over your head. And now visualize them dropping down one by one to catch this descending wave of energy, which is your breath. So this descending wave of energy takes your thought. It's like you flush your brain and empty all your thoughts, and they drop down from your mind. And one by one, with every breath you take, they leave your mind. And with a few more breaths, I want you to visualize your mind like an open and empty field. Very calm, very quiet. I want you to focus a lot more on your body than your ego and your mind. Be with your body. Trust your body. There is an ancient healing power and resource within your body that you can easily tap into, that has been coded into our DNA. And the more you connect with your body, the easier that becomes for you. Finish with a few more breaths. Slowly and gradually wake your senses up and open your eyes and start to wake yourself up.
Wow. Yeah,
This was the mini version.
You took me to another place there, yeah.
Cool.
That
Yeah.
was really nice.
Let's hope that it did that for a lot of people who are listening. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just a drop.
Thank you.
Of
for
course.
this. What a great pleasure it is having you here in the studio. We have to do it again.
Of course.
Next time you bring the band and sing in here.
I hope so. Sure. Why not?
Merci.
Of course. Thank
Khudafiz.
you. Khudafiz.
Dr. Siamak Shirazi. Nice to have him here. Okay, this is full time for Rook for today. Our website, rookmedia.com, is where you can link to all things Rook related. Anything at all from our past programming you're looking for is there, rookmedia.com. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Super P, Patty Saw, Smart Pegah, Savvy Roham, Talented Anahita, Methodical Kave, and The Bearded Omid. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Do subscribe if you haven't done so already. Find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. See you at the Toomaj Salehi rallies this weekend somewhere. Mizun Bashir.